Chapter 7:15. Ku Xian and Qing Xian schools cultivators traveled together for another 10 days. They were now only 1,000 miles away from the venue of the congratulatory banquet. When they arrived, they heard the sound of drums and music. They all looked down, but all they saw was a sea of clouds, and they couldn't see through it. He Yizhu stood on the jade plate of the four seas and cast his gaze downwards, but to no avail. He laughed mockingly and said, so secretive, deliberately mystifying. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves and released a gust of strong wind, intending to disperse the clouds. However, the result of this technique shocked him. Although the cloud was swept away by him, it closed up and returned to its original state. He frowned slightly. Such a scene was not the result of any Taoist technique or supernatural power. If it wasn't a restrictive array, then it was the use of some strange treasure. Mao Wuwei came to his side, looked at it and said, I heard that Xianyu School has a treasure called the Three Mountains Qi-suppressing tablet. This treasure can change the weather. Maybe it's this. He Yizhu agreed, that makes sense. Xianyu was defeated, so this treasure should be in Zhongtai's hands. Perhaps the commotion just now had alarmed the people inside. The clouds and mist suddenly parted in all directions, and a flying boat flew out from within. Zhongtai Elder Bai stood at the bow of the boat and bowed to the two from afar. He said with a smile, Forgive me, sect leaders. My sect leader should be the one to welcome the two of you personally. However, an esteemed guest has arrived and I can't leave at the moment, so I can only come here. When He Yizhu heard this, he was instantly displeased. Both of them were respected elders of a sect, and each of their statuses were not below Qiao Huanzhuan's. Not to mention that both of them had come together, but now they had only sent one elder, which was extremely rude. He said coldly, I'd like to ask who has such a great reputation to have sect leader Qiao personally accompany them. Elder Bai smiled, who else can it be? It's naturally sect leader Chen of Fengxiang Sword School. He Yizhu sneered, Brother Mao, it seems like you have guessed correctly. Mao Wuwei looked confused and asked, what did I expect? He Yizhu saw that he was pretending to be confused, and scolded him in his heart. Elder Bai acted as if he didn't notice his dissatisfaction. He cupped his hands and said, Please follow me. He Yizhu went back to drive the four seas jade plate, and followed him into the sea of clouds. After traveling for a few miles, the view in front of him opened up. The sky was high and the clouds were low. Below them was a curtain that covered the mountains and earth. Every time it swayed, there would be layers of spiritual light and astral winds dancing. At a glance, it seemed like it would cover an area of several thousand miles. This. He Yizhu was shocked. This. Mao Wuwei's listless look disappeared at once. He looked down thoughtfully. Elder Bai smiled and pointed down, this is the victory song flag. After our sect destroyed Xianyu, we seized 47 celestial cities and obtained more than 10,000 formation flags. This treasure was made from them, and it can be separated or combined, and it can be big or small. It can cover the ground as a blanket, and it can be small as a handkerchief. However, after Madame held it in her hands, she felt that it was not stylish enough, so she used 10-direction brocade cloud silk, heart jade sea flower, and longevity golden auspicious knot. She instructed thousands of female disciples to work together and weaved it on the moon treading loom for 20 years, and finally it became what it is today. He Yizhu and Mao Wuwei couldn't help but look at each other. The materials that Elder Bai had mentioned were originally meant to be used to make Taoist robes for cultivators, but now, they were used to refine this banner. Seeing this, the two of them were inwardly shocked. They couldn't help but wonder how much benefit Zhongtai had obtained from the Xianyu sect. When Rong Jun reincarnated, he originally wanted to hand over the sect's treasury to Jinrenhe, so that Zhongtai couldn't take it. However, things were unpredictable. After Yang Shuyong surrendered to Zhongtai, he gave the treasury to Zhongtai in exchange for sparing his life. This was not the one that Zhang Yan moved away. Xianyu's thousands of years of savings were all inside. After obtaining this treasury, Zhongtai had the confidence to do all kinds of extravagant things. After Mao Wuwei looked down a few times, he suddenly shook his head and said, "This treasure takes up thousands of miles. It's not that I'm looking down on Brother Qiao's ability, but with his cultivation, he wouldn't be able to make it no matter what. Not only him, in Zhongtai sect, no cultivator of this generation has this ability. There should be another expert who helped him." Elder Bai laughed and said, "Sect leader Mao is still the one who sees things clearly. I'll just say it." He paused for a while, then said solemnly, "To be honest, when I was making this treasure, I received some pointers from Jinren Zheng." Hearing this, both of them had different reactions. Mao Wuwei lowered his head and revealed a look of contemplation, while He Yizhu's expression changed. She thought to herself, could it be as Jinren Heng said, that Zhong Tai obtained some method of prolonging life passed down by Grand Master Daimu? One could not blame him for thinking this way. Zheng Weixing and He Li, the two Dong Tian Jinren, had lived for 3,000 years and were at the end of their lifespan. However, 20 years ago, just after the Dragon Pillar ceremony, when the Dong Tian Jinren in the sect looked at the qi, they saw that the qi activity in Zhong Tai's direction, which was showing signs of weakening, had become strong again. Looking at the sign, it would have at least another few hundred years of fate energy. On the other hand, He Li's place was like a dying mountain, completely dissipating after a few years. Before coming to this congratulatory banquet, he thought it was not bad to join forces with Fengxiang, Qingxian, and the three sects to pressure Zhong Tai. Even if they could not stop him from taking away the Taoist book from the netherworld, they would at least want a share of it. However, when he came here, he realized that Zhong Tai was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Especially Qin Yuan, he did not know what he was planning. If the three sects failed to join forces, how could Ku Xian and Qingxian sects lower their heads to this sect? While he was thinking, Mao Wuwei's voice came to his ears. If Qiao Huanzhuan could convince Qin Yuan, why would he need to put up such a show? This time, he purposely treated the two of us unfairly and showed respect to Qin Yuan. He's just trying to plant a thorn in our three sects, secretly trying to sow discord. Fellow Taoist, you should just ignore such despicable methods. He Yizhu snorted softly. What he said made some sense, but the three sects each had their own selfish motives and were never a monolithic block. Chen Yuan also knew Qiao Huanzhuan's purpose, but not only did he not decline, he even went forward gladly. There might be some reason behind this, it was just that he did not know about it. After everyone moved forward for a moment, Elder Bai Daoren said, "We're here." He took out a jade token and waved it. The Victory Song gate below opened a circular opening that allowed everyone to pass through. Then, he turned back to call out to them and led the way in. The cultivators of the two sects followed him. After going down to the inner room, they first saw a jade-like blue lake and three towering mountains surrounding it in a triangular formation. On the north mountain, there was a golden jade platform that was 1,000 feet high. It was bright and dazzling, as if another golden bell platform had been built here. Elder Bai pointed to one of the mountains and said, "Please look, this mountain is the one that was moved away by Jinren Zhang during the fight." When he and Mao heard this, they looked at it a few more times. The details of the Dragon Pillar fight, the two of them had already tried to find out. But after all, hearing is not as good as seeing it with their own eyes. Now that they saw this mountain towering in front of them, their hearts were in awe. How strong did the power have to be able to move it away? Elder Bai looked at the two of them and smiled to himself. He knew that he had achieved his goal. He said, Sect leader Shixiang is waiting for you on the treasure platform, please move your jade toes." Both of them nodded their heads and landed on the main hall below them. After a while, they arrived at the empty space in front of the hall. There were people coming to greet the junior disciples. Rows of maids dressed in feather clothes came out to greet them. They sprinkled water and spread flowers. There were also disciples opening the way in front of them with bead lanterns. There was even the sound of flute and drum music lingering in their ears. After passing through two halls, they arrived at a golden hall. There were two people sitting at the highest point. Zhongtai sect leader Qiao Huanzhuan sat on the highest seat. Beside him was a person wearing black clothes and a black crown. He looked extremely strict. It was Fengxiang Sword School leader Qin Yuan. At this moment, the two of them looked like old friends who had not seen each other for many years. They were talking and laughing happily. He turned his gaze again and saw that Elder Yan was greeting a white-haired old Taoist at another table not far away. The old Taoist looked to be quite old, so he thought he was another sect head. He pointed and asked, "May I know who that person is?" Elder Bai took a look and said, "His name is Tsing Songluan. Perhaps the two of you don't know his name. But if I were to mention his Shixiang Lu Gongnan, I'm sure you have heard of him." Mao Wuwei nodded and said, "The Book of Stargazing." Elder Bai Daoren said, "Yes." Tsing Songluan was also treated as a distinguished guest because of the Book of Stargazing. However, his hair was now white, and he was not as spirited as he was a few decades ago. Mao Wuwei smiled and said, "I heard that this book seeks luck and avoids calamity. Even in a dangerous situation, it can find a way out. It's really a rare treasure." Zhong Tai was able to turn misfortune into fortune this time and turn misfortune into fortune. "I guess it's because of the help of this treasure." Elder Bai smiled but did not answer. He turned to the hall and said, "Sect leader, I have already welcomed the leaders of Ku Xan School and Qing Xian School." Sect leader Qiao seemed to have just noticed the two of them. He looked happy and stood up. He said, "So it's the two leaders. Please come and take a seat." As he said this, he came down from the stage. He and Mao Wuwei repeatedly said that they did not dare to. After exchanging some pleasantries, they went up to the hall and sat down. Just now, before they could say anything, a disciple hurried in from the outer hall and said, Sect leader Zhang of Shenwu Mountains Hanyuan School has arrived." Sect leader Qiao suddenly stood up and said, "Let me personally go and welcome him." He then turned to Elder Bai and said, "Junior apprentice brother, please greet the three leaders on my behalf." As he said this, he cupped his hands and bowed. He then quickly walked down the stairs and out of the hall. He and Mao Wuwei looked at each other. Before the Battle of the Dragon Pillars, the reason why Zhong Tai was able to suppress Xian Yu was because of this person's help. This kind of behavior was probably done on purpose to show the closeness between the two schools. Chen Yuan stroked his beard and said, "Both of you, I have long heard of this person's reputation. Why don't we go and see what kind of person this Taoist Zhang is?" He Yizhu said, "That's fine too." Mao Wuwei also said, "That's what I was thinking." The three of them walked out of the hall together. When they arrived at the main entrance, they felt a surge of spiritual energy in the sky. When they looked up, they saw a towering palace that was hundreds of feet in size suspended in midair. It had golden pillars and jade steps, and the roof tiles were flowing with light. On the four corners of the palace, auspicious clouds were like wings, fluttering and spreading, and there was a rumbling sound of thunder. Then, they saw the palace door open, and a warm light flew down. On top of it, more than 100 figures appeared. Chapter 7:16. As soon as the hundreds of cultivators appeared, the entire golden platform went silent. At this moment, there were already more than 10,000 cultivators who had rushed over from all directions to attend the banquet gathered below the stage. Seeing that the person who came this time was actually able to cause the sect leader of Zhongtai to personally come out to welcome him, most of them had already guessed who the person who came was. They all stared at the sky without blinking, wanting to see what the rumored person looked like. He Yizhu cast her gaze over and saw that the person in front was a young Taoist in a black robe. He had an imposing appearance and his eyes were filled with divine light. Around him, spiritual waves surged and surged. The heavenly cloud above his head suddenly separated and closed, gathering and dispersing. It was extremely strange. He Yizhu's expression turned cold and thought to himself, looks like this Taoist Zhang will be able to enter the third-degree realm in another 100 years. With this person helping Zhong Tai from the back, I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to gain an advantage on the Dragon Pillar this time. Thinking about this, he couldn't help but worry. If this person joined forces with Zhong Tai, it would be a great threat to the three sects of the south. He couldn't help but think about how to move them away. After Qin Yuan looked at Zhang Yan a few times, his gaze landed on the two girls behind him who looked similar. He saw that the two girls were as beautiful as jade, their skin was as white as snow, and their talent was excellent. Like Fan Yinghui, he sighed and said, "This Taoist Zhang has two good disciples." This time, because Zhong Tai invited the sects of Dongsheng, Zhang Yan didn't go alone. The leaders of the 36 sects of Shenwu Mountain also came with him. As his personal disciples, the Wang sisters also came along out of courtesy. They were originally citizens of the 9 cities. Since their ancestors lived in the Qinsang school, they had been nourished by the spirit lake since they were young. Their talent was naturally not something ordinary people could compare to. When Zhang Yan came out of the lofty cloud tower, he looked around and waved his sleeves. A light gushed out from under his feet and he floated down. Sect leader Qiao quickly walked up and cupped his hands, saying, "Sect leader Zhang, everyone in Zhongtai has been waiting for you for a long time." Zhang Yan smiled and returned the greeting. He said politely, "My Hanyuan is just a small remote sect. I can't accept such a big gift." Sect leader Qiao hastily said, "I am worthy, I am worthy." While the two were talking, they heard a voice. "Taoist Zhang, may I ask what the heavenly palace is? Where did you get it?" Zhang Yan looked in the direction of the sound. He saw that the person who spoke was ordinary. There was nothing special about it. But on top of it were the 3 spiritual clouds, like leaves, not exposed. He asked, "May I know how to address this Taoist?" Qiao Huanzhuan stretched out her hand and gestured, saying with a smile, "Come, come, let me introduce you to Jinren. This is Ku Xian Sect's sect master, Jinren He. So it's he Zhang Men." Zhang Yan raised his hand and bowed, then smiled and said, "Let me introduce he Zhang Men. This item is called the Towering Cloud Palace. It can be used for walking and can also be used as a cultivation abode. It was made by a capable person from my sect." He Yizhu raised her eyebrows and said, "As far as I know, the person who can make this treasure must have his own means, and he must have used an earth-fire heavenly furnace. Among the 4 big sects of Dongsheng, we don't have such a place. Jinren Zhang is being modest by calling himself a small sect." Mao Wuwei said, "He Zhang Men, have you forgotten that Jinren Zhang and Jinren Shen Baishuang came from the same sect? Jinren Shen established his sect in Dongsheng, and it has been hundreds of years since then. He should be considered a cultivator of Dongsheng." He Yizhu pretended to be unhappy and said, "Brother Qiao, you're wrong. The Python tribe has also established a foothold in the Northern Sea realm. Are they also cultivators of Dongsheng?" Seeing the two of them echoing each other, they pointed out that Zhang Yan's background was not simple, and that he was not a cultivator of this continent, so he should not be easily trusted. In particular, they deliberately spoke loudly so that the cultivators below the stage could also hear them. Their intentions were self-evident. Sect leader Qiao frowned at first, then relaxed and said in a slightly cold voice, "Demons are demons, humans are humans. How can I not distinguish between here and the outside? Hanyuan is also a cultivator of the Xianmen Dao, not a demon or a different species. Sect leaders, you're worrying too much." At this time, Zhang Yan laughed and said, "According to what I know, in the past 10,000 years, there have only been 2 patriarchs in the Dongxing continent. One was Patriarch Dharma. After he ascended, he left behind the Zhongtai and Xianyu sects. The other was Patriarch Jingcang, who founded the Shaocang realm. As for the other major sects, they all came from other continents. In detail, I, Hanyuan, am not one step behind them." He Yizhu's expression froze. If they were to talk about the root cause, it was true that the 2 sects that Zhang Yan mentioned were natives of Dongsheng. As for the cultivators of these 3 sects, they all crossed the sea from the Donglai continent thousands of years ago, and then occupied the mountains to establish their sections. If they were to think about it carefully, they could not be considered to be from this continent. Even the evil sects that had been destroyed long ago were established much earlier than the 3 sections. But it was also because of this that the 3 sects were even more vigilant against people from other continents. Seeing that the situation was slightly tense, Chen Yuan, who had not spoken all this while, spoke. Sect head Xiao is right. Since we are all Xian sect disciples, why is there a need to distinguish who is close or who is distant? He Zhangmen, don't you think so? He Yizhu could not see through what Chen Yuan was planning. But since things had come to this point, it was not good to continue pestering him. She reluctantly nodded and said, Sect head Chen is right. Sect head Xiao laughed loudly, the unhappiness on his face was swept away. He said, it is rare that the leaders of the 4 major sects are gathered here. We should drink to our heart's content. There is no need to talk about these minor details. Everyone, follow me to the banquet. While everyone was drinking, Elder Hui Xian and Ji Daoren had already arrived outside the southwest dragon pillar. The Yuanying cultivators of Zhongtai sect had all gone to the banquet. There were only a few disciples here, so naturally they could not stop the 2 of them. The 2 rays of light circled a few times in front of the dragon pillar. Just in front of a stone cave surrounded by broken stones, Ji Daoren revealed himself. He looked at the ground. There was a pit that had long been cleaned out. It was dark and bottomless. An indescribable expression surfaced in his eyes. But he was not in a hurry to go down. Instead, he looked back at the victory song flag, floating in the sky and said sarcastically, fellow Taoist Hui Xian, it seems that Zhongtai is indeed worried about you. Sect head Xiao had placed the victory song flag here not only to intimidate the cultivators of the 3 sects, but also for another purpose. According to the previous plan, no matter what Hui Xian got, he had to leave it behind while he would escape far away and pretend to steal the book. And if he had other intentions and did not act according to the previous plan, then this treasure flag would stop him. Before long, many Zhongtai sect cultivators would rush over. Hui Xian old ancestor said indifferently, how would I not know what Xiao Huanzhuan is planning? I have already expected it. Ji Daoren asked, in that case, fellow Taoist should have a way to solve it. Hui Xian old ancestor said in a deep voice, this is very easy. After getting the Taoist book, if someone comes to receive us, there is no harm in handing it over. Once the flag door is opened, we can try to get it back. Moreover, he would definitely not think that there is still fellow Taoist here. With the 2 of us working together, even if Du Shixuan came personally, it would also be useless. Ji Daoren was stunned. He did not think that the method was so simple. But thinking again, it was not a bad method. Xiao Huanzhuan had made so many arrangements, he would definitely not let them leave. As long as the flag array was opened, it would be much easier. But he still had a question. He said, this place is only 300 miles away from the place of the banquet. I heard that Taoist Zhang is skilled in the sword escape technique. In no time, he would be able to catch up with us. Does fellow Taoist have a way to deal with him? Hui Xian old ancestor said expressionlessly, my disciple will naturally bring up the rear for us. Taoist Ji glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. Then, he suddenly smiled and said, good. Those who want to achieve great things don't bother with trifles. So what if I give up a disciple? I'll just find another one in the future. However, have you thought about where you'll go after this is done? The location of Zhongtai's banquet this time was very particular. It happened to be on the east side of the dragon pillar. This meant that after they succeeded, they could only choose from the north, south and west. And the north was the Shenwu mountain. Now it was sealed by the Cold Abyss sect. If they wanted to go there, they could only escape from the extreme heaven. But he was not willing to do so. Although the escape to the extreme heaven was unobstructed, it was also unconcealed and would be easily detected by cultivators of the same cultivation. And according to what he knew, there were at least 3 Yuanying hangers-on in the Shenwu mountain. Especially one of them had strange Dao techniques and high attainments in escape techniques. He might not be able to win against them. With the help of the escape formation, it was not impossible to delay them for a while. That would be enough for Zhang Yan to catch up. As for the south, that was the land of the 3 sects of the south. If they went there, the 3 sects would not let them off and they could not go either. So there was only one choice left. Hui Xian, old ancestor, said in a deep voice, head to the west. Ji Daoren stared at him and said, have you thought it through? The west is an important place for Zhongtai. Hui Xian, old ancestor, said calmly, those who have some cultivation in Zhongtai are all at the banquet. As long as we do not head to Hope Voice Mountain, there is nothing that can threaten the two of us. Then what next? Where should we go? Hui Xian, old ancestor, seemed to have a card up his sleeve and said confidently, the two of us will not stop and head to the West Sea. When we reach the West Sea boundary, we will pretend to go around to the north. Since Qiao Huanzhuan knows about my relationship with the Python tribe, she will definitely think that I will go to the Python tribe to seek shelter. Most likely she will send people to intercept us in the north and I will do the opposite. Ji Daoren's heart moved and he said, head to the south. Hui Xian, old ancestor, nodded and said, that's right. I think fellow Taoist has also thought of it. We will go around the South Vast Sea from the West Sea and finally head to the East Vast Sea. There is a 1,000 islands reef that can go straight to Shaotsang State. As long as we can hide in there, no matter how the four sects search, they will not be able to find us. Shaotsang State, Shaotsang State. Ji Daoren murmured it twice. For thousands of years, although many people entered Shaotsang State, but no one knew where the Real Mountain Gate was. After all, this state formed its own world and it was left behind by an ascended Jinren. At least in Dongxing State, no one was able to find it. He could not help but look over and said, I did not think that Taoist Hui Xian has such ability to even be able to persuade the master of Shaotsang State. Hui Xian, old ancestor, said, the demi-calligraphy, who does not wish to have a look? Ji Daoren smiled mysteriously, the demi-calligraphy. He shook his head and with a leap, he landed into the hole on the ground and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Hui Xian, old ancestor, frowned and thought for a moment. He first scanned the surroundings and then turned his mana and turned into a beam of light that shot downwards. Chapter 717. After Hui Xian, old ancestor, entered the hole, he reached the end of the hole after a short while. He raised his head and saw a bottomless tunnel in front of him. His gaze swept over but did not see Ji Daoren's figure. He thought that he had gone in first, thus he did not stop and charged in with the astral wind. This hole was 100 feet deep and there was no obstruction in flying, but the path was winding and snake-like. There were depressions everywhere and the water was a foot high. The stalagmites were like a forest, clustered together, as if thousands of swords were hanging above. There was a baleful aura floating back and forth, with killing intent hidden in every step. However, most of the restrictions here had already dissipated, and even the remnants were removed by the Zhongtai disciples who came here previously, thus there was no need to care. After traveling for a short while, his figure paused as two forks appeared in front of him. On the left, a gust of wind came from within, blowing onto his body, chilling him to the bone. On the right, there seemed to be a surging underground river, from time to time there would be sounds of rocks striking, it was noisy to the ears, it seemed like the water flow was very rapid. His gaze swept back and forth before raising his hand to draw a stream of energy over, trying to determine where Ji Daoren was going. However, after casting the spell for a long time, he did not get any clues, not knowing if he purposely hid it or if the energy here was chaotic. He thought for a while on the spot before flying towards the left-hand hole. Along the way, a gust of cold wind blew over, even with his cultivation he was shaky. He was not surprised and immediately made a spell, just now he was able to stabilize himself. After traveling for about an hour, not knowing how deep he was underground, the wind around him slowly calmed down, not far away a spacious cave hall came into view. Out of caution, he landed a few feet off the ground, floating in the air. After traveling for 100 feet, he was already inside the cave. At this moment he suddenly stopped and raised his head to take a look. He saw a floating platform about 70 feet up. Ji Daoren had his back facing him, standing alone on top. He was holding a pearl in his hand, shining it back and forth, as if he was looking for something. Hui Xian, old ancestor, jumped up and said with a slightly unhappy tone, Dao brother Ji made it hard for me to find. Ji Daoren did not even turn back, he waved at him and pointed to the front, fellow Taoist Hui Xian, please come up and take a look. Hui Xian old forefather thought that he had found something and took a few steps forward. He looked down and saw that there was a stone niche a few feet in front of him. A skinny silver-robed Taoist was sitting inside. His eyes were closed, and it was obvious that he was a corpse. He frowned. Then, as if he sensed something, he looked towards the two directions and a look of shock appeared on his face. The entire cavern was actually filled with such shrines. There were tens of thousands of them, and each of them had a person sitting in it. After looking around, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He asked in bewilderment, "Who are these people? Why are they here?" Ji Daoren didn't answer. He just stretched out his hand and pulled a talisman from the Taoist's waist. He weighed it in his palm and handed it over. That corpse had experienced countless years and was already decaying. Now that it was tossed around like that, it immediately turned into a pile of dust. Hui Xian old ancestor took a look and frowned. Spirit returning sect? What sect is this? Is there such a sect in our Dongxing state? Ji Daoren said faintly, close to 10,000 years ago. Spirit returning sect was the #1 sect in our Dongxing state and dominated half of the continent. At that time, our Fuyang sect, Corpse Cult and Mang Luo Palace were just 3 small sects under them. It was the first time Hui Xian old ancestor heard such a saying. He lowered his head and thought for a while before asking in puzzlement, according to what Dao brother said, this sect should be extremely powerful and there must be records of it in the ancient books. But why have I never heard of it? Ji Daoren sneered, it is not strange that Dao friend never heard of it. That is because someone purposely covered it up. Who did this? Ji Daoren laughed coldly, in our Dongxing state, other than Great Master Dami, who else could do this? Hui Xian old ancestor could not help but look surprised. Ji Daoren folded his sleeves and said slowly, Great Master Dami had remarkable abilities but his abilities did not come out of nowhere. There are rumors that he was originally a disciple of this spirit returning sect but for some reason he had enmity with his sect and went to another continent to avoid trouble. After his cultivation was successful, he came back and fought with spirit returning sect for hundreds of years using his remarkable abilities and Dao techniques. A number of heavenly abodes of this sect died in his hands and since then they have not been able to recover. Hui Xian old ancestor's eyes lit up when he heard this and clapped his hands, praising, to be able to defeat a sect alone, senior's grace and elegance really fascinates us. He cupped his hands together, may I ask Dao brother, what happened after that? Ji Daoren said coldly, although spirit returning sect was forced to such a state, they were still able to hide in the mountain and struggle on while at death's door because they still have a magical treasure called 9 Huang Star Pearl. There are a total of 9 of these treasures and when they are shot out together, the wind and clouds change color, tsunami and mountains collapse. Even Dami did not dare to face it head-on. It was just that he borrowed a powerful magical treasure from somewhere and arranged a fight with spirit returning sect head Beima on the sea. In the end, both of them were injured and when he recovered, he then found out that spirit returning sect head was already dead. In order to protect himself, his disciple followed his orders and hid under this dragon pillar, giving up the entire Dongxing state. Hui Xian old ancestor looked left and right, pointed and said, look at the people here, they are all emaciated, their eyes sunken and cheeks withered, they should have died due to the exhaustion of their vitality. Taoist Ji chuckled and said, you are right. The spirit returning sect thought that by hiding underground, they would be able to avoid annihilation, but they were wrong. Demi was not willing to let the matter rest. After hearing about this, he spent 100 years to set up a seal around the dragon pillar. He also used his mana to cut off the spiritual opportunity of the earth meridians within a radius of 10,000 miles, so that none of the tens of thousands of spirit returning sect disciples and elders could escape. In the end, they were buried here. Hui Xian old ancestor nodded unconsciously and said, that is how it should be. To cut the weeds, one must remove the roots. If Master Dami did not do this, after he ascended, spirit returning sect would definitely come out to take revenge on his younger disciples once their vitality recovered. Ji Daoren snorted instead. Hui Xian old ancestor knew that his sect was also annihilated by Zhong Tai, Xian Yu, and the other sects, and thought that these words had touched his sore spot. He smiled faintly and asked again, although Master Dami annihilated spirit returning sect, it is normal for us cultivators to fight and kill, so why did he need to cover it up after the matter? Ji Daoren sneered and said, Master Dami was also from spirit returning sect, no matter what the reason was, it would not be good if it was spread out, so why would he take the initiative to tell the future generations to know? Hui Xian old ancestor nodded in realization. After Ji Daoren finished speaking, he did not bother about him and started to look around with the pearl. From just now's words, Hui Xian old ancestor had already roughly guessed what Ji Daoren was looking for. He looked at the latter walking to and fro, but stood at one side and did not make a sound. His gaze was faint, not knowing what he was thinking about. After an hour, Ji Daoren had already searched more than half of the cave hall, leaving only the southwest corner that he had not searched. After turning here, he raised his head and took a few glances, and his footsteps involuntarily paused, as if he had discovered something. With a tap of his toes, balls of white smoke rose up, and when he reached a height of 5 to 6 feet, he saw that there was no trace of anyone behind an alcove, only a tall stone door, with 2 ancient copper rings fastened on it, stained with rust, and on both sides were several lotus stone platforms, on which sat 7 white-haired Taoists with different expressions. He did not look at those corpses, but stared at the stone door, his expression slightly agitated, and muttered to himself, it should be here. With a wave of his sleeve, a gust of astral wind hit it, and the stone door's restrictions had already dispersed. With this blow, it collapsed backwards with a loud bang, and shook those white-haired Taoists on the lotus platforms into ashes. At this moment, a narrow elixir room appeared behind the door, Ji Daoren carefully sensed, and did not detect any spiritual opportunities, so he boldly walked in with a peace of mind. After entering, he took a few glances, and saw that the layout was simple, the original furnishings were mostly rotten, a thick layer of dust accumulated on the ground, and in the middle of the room, there was only a copper furnace, behind the furnace was a cattail hassock, other than that, there was nothing else. He walked 2 rounds, and there was no other way out. He was surprised, and thought to himself, could it be that I found the wrong way? Just as he was about to leave, his mind changed, his eyes flashed, and with a wave of his sleeve, the copper furnace was pushed to one side. As soon as the furnace was pushed away, a square well was revealed, the whole body was built with white jade, and inside was a pile of strange stones, piled up with thousands of greasy and slippery pebbles. In every stone there was a small hole, from which fine-colored smoke was spewing out, the light reflected, and the thin mist was gently gathered. At the top, there was a jade bowl, containing a green bead the size of a goose egg, smooth and round. There were fine silver inscriptions on the surface, and from time to time, thousands of needle-like fine colorful rays were released. When Ji Daoren saw this, his face was filled with excitement, and just as he was about to take it, he seemed to suddenly remember something, and carefully took out a silk handkerchief from his sleeve, wrapped it around his hand, and then went forward to grab the bead. He was extremely excited, and after confirming that it was not a fake, he could not help but burst out laughing. He had also heard the seniors of his sect mention this item, and just wanted to take the opportunity when the dragon pillar restriction dissipated to come and have a try. But after all it was only a few words, and might not be true, so he was originally prepared to return without any success, but he did not expect that he would actually get this treasure of the legends so smoothly. The joy in his heart was indescribable. After looking at it for a while, when he heard footsteps behind him, he did not keep it, and still held it in his palm to observe carefully. Just now while Ji Daoren was not around, Hui Xian old ancestor had already searched the entire pit, but did not find the demi-book, and was disappointed. Right now when he saw this treasure, his eyes could not help but reveal a strange splendor, but he quickly restrained it, and tried to make his tone as calm as possible, and asked, could this be the 9 Huang star bead? Ji Daoren said, it is just one of them. Hui Xian old ancestor could not help but ask, then where are the other 8? Ji Daoren looked back at him, and said with a smile that was not a smile, there are a total of 8 palaces under the dragon pillar, and they should be stored separately. But I am not greedy, to be able to get one is already lucky, even if I get the rest, I am afraid I will not have the fortune to enjoy them. When Hui Xian old ancestor heard that, his heart moved slightly, but he said, with this item in hand, I think it will be easy for fellow Taoist to deal with that Zhang Taoist. Ji Daoren flipped his wrist, kept the treasure bead, and said, I still need to go back and refine it, it cannot be used now. Hui Xian nodded, I have waited for a long time, and delayed for a long time, I cannot stay here for long, and should go out. Chapter 718. Ji Daoren had already gotten what he wanted for this trip, so he naturally had no objections. Together with Hui Xian old ancestor, they returned using the original route. This was much faster than when they came, and in just less than an hour, they were back on the surface. After they came out, the two of them raised their heads and saw the curtain covering the sky. Shengujing had already blocked their way, and they had already expected this, hence they were not flustered as they stood there without moving, waiting for the people from Zhongtai to arrive. In just an instant's worth of time, they saw a ray of light flying over from afar, and in a short while, a Taoist wearing a crown and a formal attire walked out from the light. It was Elder Zhongtai Lin. When he saw Hui Xian old ancestor, he couldn't wait and asked, Hui Xian, have you obtained Founding Master's personal letter? His words were impolite, and Hui Xian old ancestor was infuriated as he cupped his hands and said calmly, Elder Lin, there is no personal letter from Founding Master to me in the underground palace. Elder Lin's face darkened as he shouted sternly, Hui Xian, don't you dare to play tricks. He used his hand to point upwards, look at the pillar in the sky, without my permission, don't even think of leaving this place. Hui Xian old ancestor said unhurriedly, Elder Lin, don't be anxious, let me finish what I have to say. Although I did not obtain Founding Master's personal letter, but I have obtained another treasure, so this trip is not in vain. Elder Lin was half believing and half doubting as he said, since that's the case, quickly hand it over. As long as you hand it over to me, I will immediately let you go. Hui Xian old ancestor said, but this item is not in my hands. Then where is it? Hui Xian old ancestor smiled and moved aside. Elder Lin looked over in astonishment, and when he saw Ji Daoren, a shocked expression surfaced on his face. Hui Xian old ancestor had once said that he would bring along a disciple as a helper. Just now he saw the two of them at this moment. As he was under Zhongtai realm, he didn't pay much attention to it. But now that he took another look, he discovered that this person's cultivation was actually a third-stage realm cultivator, and he subconsciously took a step back. Panicking, he asked, You, who are you? Ji Daoren saw that he was flustered and despised him in his heart. He mocked, I am only fellow Taoist. Hui Xian is afraid that you, Zhongtai, are up to no good, so he invited me over to help. Watch carefully. This is the item I obtained from the underground palace. Hold it tight. With a flick of his sleeve, he threw out the 9 yellow star bead that he had obtained from the underground palace without any hesitation. Elder Lin was extremely vigilant. Seeing a dark green bead flying towards him, he didn't dare to go forward to receive it. Twisting his sleeves, he gathered his magic power and held it in midair. Looking at it carefully, he was stunned at first, but then a look of joy appeared on his face. The spiritual vigor in the bead was so abundant that he had never seen it before. Would it be able to shake the mountains and crack the earth? After a while, he let out a long breath, looked over and said, Hui Xian, you have done a good deed. Hui Xian ancestor said calmly, since that is the case, Elder Lin, please open the way. Elder Lin made a sound of acknowledgement. He didn't want Hui Xian to stay there any longer, so he kept the 9 yellow star bead and held it tightly in his hand, and took out a token. He waved it towards the sky and saw a crack in the sky, revealing a small exit. He said, Hui Xian, quickly go on your way. There might be people coming to hunt you down later, but don't worry, the sect leader knows about your contribution, it is just for show. As long as you don't make any mistakes, after you reincarnate, I, Zhongtai, will naturally send people to look after that place. Hui Xian ancestor put on a grateful expression and cupped his hands, then Elder Lin, please thank the sect leader on my behalf. Elder Lin waved his hands and urged, let's go, let's go. Ji Daoren didn't say a word and charged out of the sky screen first. Hui Xian ancestor originally thought that he would make a move, but seeing his actions, he guessed that he might have other thoughts, so he did not make a sound, bade farewell, and also headed towards the sky. At this moment, the high clouds in the sky parted, and a ray of light landed in front of him. Chu Chengji came out and bowed. Master, was the trip successful? Hui Xian nodded his head and turned to Ji Daoren. Fellow Daoist threw away the 9 yellow star bead and didn't snatch it back. What do you want? Ji Daoren smiled faintly and said, even if I give it to him, can he really take it away? He looked down and lifted his chin slightly, indicating, in a moment, we will know. Hui Xian ancestor knew that he definitely had a trick up his sleeve, so he focused and looked down. Once the two of them left, Elder Lin was completely at ease. He pinched the spiritual bead and looked at it, clicking his tongue. After looking for a while, he was about to put it into his sleeve. But just at this moment, the bead suddenly trembled and gave off rays of spiritual light, like numerous needles piercing into the flesh and bones. When he was shown by this light, his entire body's qi and blood surged, his vital energy seemed to burst out of his body and poured straight into the bead. Not good. He was shocked and hastily used his Fa Li to get rid of it. But as soon as the bead left his hand, it suddenly trembled and spouted out a red mist. In a flash, the red mist surged up and surrounded him. Elder Lin's nose instantly smelled a hot and fishy wind and instantly felt his strength disappearing. At first he was still struggling violently, but after 10 breaths, his head gradually became dizzy and he no longer resisted. In the end, his vision turned black and he completely lost consciousness. Hui Xian ancestor saw this scene and was secretly shocked. He stroked his beard and said, this bead indeed has other mysteries, luckily I have not made a move just now. Just now when he was in the underground palace, it was not that he did not have any greedy thoughts, but out of cautiousness, he resisted and did not make a move. Right now he felt fortunate and turned his head to take a look. He saw Ji Daoren's expression as if he had long known this would happen, so he asked, may I ask Dao brother, is there something strange about that bead? Ji Daoren glanced at him and said, I heard my sect elders say that this 9 Huang star bead is treacherous and evil. Every time it is used, it needs to feed on a cultivator's vital blood, and 10 Yuanying cultivators are needed to nourish one bead. Even so, after using it, their vitality will be greatly damaged. If not for this restriction, how would spirit returning sect be exterminated? He sneered again and pointed below. This person did not know what was going on and touched it with his body, and was treated as a sacrifice by the bead. Hui Xian ancestor squinted his eyes. No wonder Ji Daoren was just now wrapping his hand with a handkerchief and did not dare to touch it. So this was the reason. And it also made sense that he only took 1 star bead. With just 1 star bead, if he wanted to use it, who knows how many cultivators' vital blood would be used to nourish it. With 9 in his hands, why would he find so many cultivators to nourish it? Even if he took it, it would be useless. After the two of them waited for 100 breaths, the red mist below dissipated, revealing a thin piece of human skin that floated down. In just a short while, a Yuanying cultivator's vitality was sucked dry by it. When Daoist Ji saw that the 9 yellow star pearl's brilliance was even brighter, he was pleased. He waved his hand, wanting to retrieve it, but this time, it was not as easy as before when he used his dermic power. The pearl actually struggled and escaped from his grasp. Ji Daoren was also stunned and wanted to cast his spell again. But this time, he still could not catch it. Instead, the 9 Huang star bead let out a sharp whistle and spread far away. Then, with a xiao sound, it shot up to the clouds like a firework. It paused for a moment and with another boom, it turned into a thin jade line and flew towards the south. Its momentum was as fast as lightning, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the horizon. It happened so suddenly that Ji Daoren also did not expect it. Seeing that the treasure that he had just now ran away just like that, he was anxious and angry. He roared angrily and his figure suddenly moved. Like a rainbow, he soared into the sky and chased after it. Hui Xian old ancestor was also stunned by this unforeseen event. After his expression changed a few times, he finally relaxed a little. He saw a clue. Ji Daoran looked like he was very familiar with this treasure bead, but he obviously did not know some key points. Otherwise, why would he make such a mistake? But this person's departure messed up his original plan. Just as he was about to think of a way, he heard a rumbling sound in his ears. The sound was distant and boundless, reverberating in the mountains. He couldn't help but look over in surprise and discovered that the sound was actually coming from the southwest dragon pillar. His thoughts turned and his expression changed slightly. He said to Chu Changji, "Quickly go." As soon as his words landed, he and Chu Changji used their escape techniques and flew towards the west. On the golden platform, sect leader Qiao was exchanging toasts with the heads of the 3 sections. At this moment, he suddenly paused and looked towards the southwest. He Yizhu also put down her wine cup and listened carefully. She said, "This sound seems to be coming from the direction of the dragon pillar." Chen Yuan and Mao Wuwei both looked towards sect leader Qiao. Even though sect leader Qiao had an agreement with Hui Xian old ancestor, he didn't ask him to make such a big commotion. It was just that at this stage, he could only go according to the previous plan. He looked at the few people seated and cupped his hands. "Everyone, don't look at me, I also don't know what exactly happened. Why don't we wait for a while? I think there will be disciples coming to report." He Yizhu sneered and said, "Wait? If we wait for a while more, I'm afraid that the thing below the dragon pillar will disappear to who knows where." Sect leader Qiao pretended to be displeased and said, "What does he Zhang Men mean by this? If you don't believe my Zhongtai sect, then why don't you follow me to take a look?" Zhang Yan raised his brows at this moment, stood up and walked to the side of the golden platform. His sleeves behind his back, his eyes glimmered as he looked far into the sky. Sect leader Qiao saw his actions and asked in surprise, "Zhenren Zhang? Is there anything wrong?" Zhang Yan said in a deep voice, "I just now sensing spiritual opportunity, I feel 8 strong qi channels surging, the closest one is the southeast dragon pillar, I think other than this pillar, the other 7 dragon pillars also have some unusual movements." At the same time, the 9 Huang star pearl seemed to have received some kind of summons and was flying rapidly towards the south. Ji Daoran had long been left behind by it and disappeared without a trace. It only took a day and a night for the pearl to travel from Dongxing Northland to the southern continent. When it reached the borders of the Great Qin nation, it didn't stop at all. It flew straight in the direction of Nanwu Mountain's Guandan courtyard. After another half a day, it reached the boundary. This place was not where the celestial city was located, so there was no prohibition formation. In addition, the disciples of the sect were forced by the miasma recently, so most of them meditated in the cave abode, and there was no one patrolling the mountain. Therefore, it was unimpeded all the way into the inner hall, and after making one round, it sank into the ground and disappeared. Zhang Boyan was refining medicine in the pill room at this moment, but he felt a sense of fear in his heart for no reason. His hands trembled, and the fire head was not directed properly. The earth fire rushed up, and a burnt smell entered his nose. He knew that this furnace of medicine was ruined. He frowned unconsciously, not because of this furnace of medicine, but just now, at that moment, he felt like he was being targeted by some ferocious creature. Chapter 719. Outside the southwest dragon pillar, dozens of rays of light flew over and stopped in front of the pit. Sect leader Qiao was the first to step out and look around. After pondering for a while, he said to the person behind him, "Junior brother Bai, take the disciples and set up formation flags in all directions. No one is allowed to enter or leave within a radius of 30 miles. If there's anything unusual, report to me immediately." Mao Wuwei rolled his eyes and stepped forward to stand in front of Elder Bai, saying, "Wait." Elder Bai stopped and cupped his hands, saying, "Sect leader Mao, what can I do for you?" Mao Wuwei pointed to the 3 Taoists behind him, devout, good sincerity, and pure white, and said, "My 3 junior brothers have been treated well by your sect. Now that they've had a full meal, it's time for them to digest their food. Why don't you go with Elder Bai?" Elder Bai snorted. It was obvious that he was worried about Zhongtai's disciples. However, The other party was also the leader of a sect, so it wasn't appropriate for him to say anything. He couldn't help but look at sect leader Qiao. Sect leader Qiao, however, wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "It's more than I can ask for if the 3 sages of Qingxian are willing to help." He then instructed Elder Bai, "The 3 Taoists are guests after all. Sect leader Mao is too polite, but you can't take it seriously. You have to be careful in everything." Elder Bai understood and bowed, then said, "My 3 Taoists, please follow me." After that, he flew into the sky and headed north. Mao Wuwei pouted and the 3 of them followed. Sect leader Qiao said to the person beside him, "Summon the disciples on duty to see me." There were originally disciples patrolling all around the dragon pillar, but Elder Lin had sent them far away for convenience's sake and because of the victory song that covered the sky. After the dragon pillar shook, these disciples were not allowed to go near it, so they didn't know what was happening inside. Now that they heard the sect leader's summon, they hurried over, but their expressions were full of fear. Sect leader Qiao pointed below and asked, "You've been on duty here. Have you seen any outsiders enter this place before?" One of the disciples hesitated for a moment before bowing and replying, reporting to sect leader, "An hour ago, Elder Lin said that he saw something strange and ordered us to stay away. He personally went in to check, but he hasn't returned yet." He Yizhu mocked, "Could it be embezzlement?" When sect leader Qiao heard this, his expression became unhappy. He flung his sleeve and said, "I have a clear conscience. I also know He Zhangmen's ability. If you don't trust me, Zhong Tai, then you can go and check it out yourself." Mao Wuwei hurriedly came over to smooth things over, saying, "He Zhangmen, this is your fault. The matter has yet to be investigated clearly, how can you come to such a conclusion?" He Yizhu laughed dryly and cupped his hands. "Fellow Taoist Qiao, I misspoke. Ever since Zhang Yan arrived, he had been watching coldly from the sidelines. He didn't join the 4 of them and only looked around. At this moment, he suddenly raised his eyebrows as if he had sensed something. He looked down again, then rolled up his sleeves and released his transcendence energy. A moment later, he came up with a dried human skin corpse. When sect leader Qiao saw it, he exclaimed, "Junior brother Lin." Everyone's eyes narrowed. As elders, they were naturally knowledgeable. They could immediately tell that Elder Lin's blood had been sucked dry and he had died. Chen Yuan frowned and said, "This method is very evil. Could it be that the person who came is a remnant of the heretical sects?" Zhang Yan shook his head slightly and said, "That might not be the case." Ever since the Dragon Pillar meeting, sect leader Qiao was very trusting of Zhang Yan. Moreover, now that he was facing the leaders of the 3 southern sects, he felt that he still needed to rely on him. Thus, he cupped his hands and said, "Sage Zhang, may I ask if you found any clues?" Zhang Yan said, "If the cultivators of the heretical sects killed someone, why would they leave a corpse behind? Could it be that they're not afraid of being found out? Therefore, I think that if Elder Lin didn't come across some vicious thing, then he must have been hit by some evil transcendent artifact. Furthermore, the other party used some tricks and left in a hurry before he could clean up the mess." Mao Wuwei thought about it and agreed, "That's right. Sage Shang's words make sense. If I were the culprit, I'd definitely come to destroy the corpse and get rid of the evidence." He Yizhu said impatiently, "Everyone, the most important thing right now is to find out whether the item underneath has been taken away or not. As for the other matters, why don't we talk about it later?" Chen Yuan said, "Among us, He Zhangmen is the best at detecting spiritual energy. Why don't we ask He Zhangmen to go down and investigate?" Mao Wuwei didn't object and said, "That's good." Sect leader Qiao didn't say anything, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. Elder Lin had already been dead for an hour. Just now, there was such a huge commotion here. Even if there was that Taoist book underneath, it had probably been taken away by someone. Whether they could go down or not, it didn't matter anymore. He Yizhu didn't decline. She cupped her hands and flew up on a cloud towards the pit. Along the way, she soon arrived at the cave of 10,000 people. She first took in a breath of qi and after a brief identification, she let out 2 cold snorts. He went around the place again, even going to the pill room. However, because those dried corpses had already turned into ashes, he didn't find anything. He didn't have the mood to stay any longer and went back out of the cave using the original path. Seeing him come out, sect leader Qiao couldn't help but ask, "How was it?" He Yizhu said, "There is a pill room under the cave house. I don't know what was originally stored inside, but it has been stolen. Just now, I've used a secret technique to investigate. There were 2 people who came here. Everyone knows one of them. It's that Hui Xian Daoren. I don't know who the other person is. However, his cultivation isn't weak. I'm afraid he's not below Hui Xian." Yuanying cultivators' qi interacted with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from time to time. Wherever he passed by, there would always be a little bit of his qi left. Although he could try to hide it, Ku Xian's sect had a secret technique. This time, he came so quickly that he could almost find out. Sect leader Qiao knew that he couldn't hide it from him. He invited Hui Xian over to clear his name. However, the other person wasn't in his plan. Elder Lin's death was strange. Although he was suspicious, he had no choice but to put on a resentful expression. He said, "So it's that old man Hui Xian. This person and I haven't been on good terms for a long time. I originally didn't bother with him on account of our brother-in-law. However, I didn't expect that not only did he come here to steal treasures, he even killed an elder in my sect. If I catch him, I'll definitely destroy his spirit and grind his bones into ashes." Chen Yuan took a look at sect leader Qiao. He had also heard about the latter's discord with Hui Xian. Although he didn't believe what he said, there was no clear evidence to prove that it was Zhong Tai who did it. There was no point in continuing to pester him. He thought for a while and said, "Brother He, can you see which direction the 2 people escaped to?" He Yizhu grabbed a handful of qi movement and used her spell to identify it. She said with certainty, Hui Xian should have gone west, while the other person should have gone south. Mao Wuwei snorted and said, "It seems that the 2 of them took advantage of Zhong Tai's banquet to sneak into this place. However, they were discovered by Elder Lin, so they killed him. Because there was a change in the dragon pillar, they hurriedly escaped. They were afraid that we would chase after them, so they escaped separately." He Yizhu said loudly, "We should quickly order people to chase after them." Mao Wuwei stroked his beard. "The 2 of them are Yuanying level 3, but we don't know who has the treasure." Chen Yuan said, "Just now, when we came over, we didn't see anyone above the Jiantian realm. They must have intentionally escaped through the mountains and rivers to avoid detection. They must not have gone far. We should order people with outstanding escape techniques to chase after them first, then send people to follow behind. We will definitely be able to catch up." He Yizhu hurriedly said, "I've brought a flying swallow boat with me this time, we can travel through the mountains and rivers without any hindrance. Why don't you hand over the person heading south to my Ku Xen school?" Sect leader Qiao also wanted to get back the thing that Hui Xian had stolen, so he cupped his hands at Zhang Yan and said, "Zhenren Zhang, your sword escape technique is unparalleled. We can't even catch up to you. Why don't we ask you to chase Hui Xian back? We will definitely thank you after this." Zhang Yan thought for a while and smiled, "For sect leader Qiao's sake, I can do it." At this moment, Chen Yuan interrupted with a smile, "Brother Qiao, this is your fault. Zhenren Zhang is an honored guest that you invited. This matter has nothing to do with him, so how can you trouble him? My Fengxiang Sword School's Rainbow Sword Master Zhu Xian is also good at escape techniques, and his cultivation is not inferior to Hui Xian's. With him, we will definitely be able to capture this person." Sect leader Qiao wanted to say something, but at this moment, a loud sound came from the southeast direction. It sounded like rolling thunder. While he was surprised, a letter flew over. He recognized it was a letter from Zhong Tai, so he took it. When he opened it, his expression changed. Chen Yuan saw that his expression was not good, so he asked, "Brother, what's the matter?" Sect leader Qiao looked at the few people present and said in a deep voice, "Just now, disciples have come to report that the Southeast Dragon Pillar's prohibition has been automatically removed." What? The 3 sect leaders were all shocked. Previously, they had already secretly checked that although the restrictions on the 8 dragon pearls were weakening, only the Southwest Dragon Pillar's restrictions were dissipating the fastest. Originally, they had speculated that it would take at least a few decades for the other 7 pillars to reach such a state, but the unforeseen event in front of them had caught them off guard. Chen Yuan pondered for a moment, then said with a straight face, "Everyone, although the 2 of them have escaped, as long as they are still in the Dongshan continent, we can still find them. I think that the most important thing now is not to capture the 2 of them, but to guard the remaining 7 dragon pillars to prevent others from stealing them." Mao Wuwei clapped his hands and said, "That's right." He Yizhu said righteously, "Since our 3 sects have come across this matter, we can't just sit back and do nothing. We will naturally share sect leader Qiao's burden." Sect leader Qiao knew that if the remaining dragon pillars were handed over to the 3 sects to guard, the things in the underground palace would probably belong to them. However, if he did not agree, he was afraid that the 3 sects would bear a grudge against him. At the moment, Zhong Tai was still unable to deal with the 3 sects alliance. He secretly scolded, "Let them be happy for now. When I, Zhong Tai, have completed my Taoist technique, I will naturally get back at them." However, he was also unwilling to let the 3 sects take all the advantages. After thinking for a while, he said, "How about this? Shenwu Mountain is the closest to the Qian position dragon pillar, so I will ask sect leader Zhang to guard this pillar, and Duishi dragon pillar will still be guarded by me, Zhong Tai. As for the other 5 pillars, I will have to trouble the 3 of you." Zhang Yan was only here to attend the banquet, but he was given a dragon pillar for free. Although the 3 sect leaders were unwilling, they did not want to offend him because of his supernatural powers and Taoist techniques, so they could only accept it. As for the remaining 5 dragon pearls, they would be divided among the 3 sections. This was sect leader Qiao's intention. He wanted to use this opportunity to sow discord among them. Unexpectedly, Mao Wuwei did not fall for his trick. He smiled and said, "Daoren is very lazy. I'm afraid he won't be able to guard 2 pillars, just 1 pillar will do." He paused for a while and continued, "If everyone is assured, then the Li Nan dragon pillar will be handed over to Daoren." Seeing that he took the initiative to take a step back, He Yizhu was overjoyed and said, "Good, good. Then my Ku Xian sect will reluctantly guard the Kan and Zhen pillars." The Kun position dragon pillar in the southwest had already been opened, and 5 pillars were divided among the 4 of them, leaving only the Sun and Zhen pillars. In the end, they fell into the hands of Fengxiang Sword School. Chapter 720. After dividing the dragon pillars, the 3 sect leaders were satisfied, but no one mentioned the matter of capturing Hui Xian and the others. If it was previously, they might have the heart to try, but now that they had the dragon pillars in their hands, they only needed to wait and they would reap the rewards. Under such circumstances, they were naturally unwilling to send their disciples to risk their lives against 3rd stage realm cultivators. As the restriction on the dragon pillars could dissipate any time, the trio of He, Mao and Chen were afraid that the treasures hidden in the underground palace would be taken by others, so they found an excuse and left first. Zhang Yan looked at the trio's escaping light and said, "Sect leader Qiao, Hui Xian has only been gone for 2 hours and he didn't dare to use the extreme heaven escaping technique. If we chase after him now, there's still a chance." Sect leader Qiao thought for a while and finally sighed. He shook his head and said, "Who knows if the treasure is with Hui Xian? It's useless to chase him all the way. Sect leader Chen is right. As long as he's still in Dongshan continent, we can find him." Zhang Yan took a look at him and said, "If the Taoist book left behind by Patriarch Dami, aren't you afraid that it would fall into the hands of outsiders?" Sect leader Qiao hesitated for a moment before saying, "To be honest, Hui Xian's lifespan is coming to an end and he's about to reincarnate. Even if the thing hidden below is really that Patriarch's handwritten book, how long would he have to comprehend it? There's no benefit at all. I still can't understand why he would do this." Zhang Yan nodded, "If it's not him, then it's most likely related to someone else." Sect leader Qiao thought to himself, he usually said that this person's skills are not below Hui Xian, so he shouldn't be a nobody. Although the 3 evil sects were exterminated that year, there were a few that escaped. If it's one of them, it would be troublesome. Zhong Tai and Xian Yu were behind the destruction of the 3 evil sections. Although the 2 sects had merged together, they were at their weakest and were on guard against the 3 southern sections. If the evil sect cultivators took this chance to seek revenge, they might not be able to handle it. Thinking about this, he did not want Zhang Yan to leave. He cupped his hands and said, "Spiritual Master Zhang, we do not know how many people are coveting the dragon pillar. If the treasure falls into the hands of the evil people, it will be detrimental to the celestial sect. Please be careful of the Qian dragon pillar." Zhang Yan returned the greeting and said, "There are more than 100 disciples from Mount Shenwu attending the banquet. When I am not here, please take care of them, sect leader Qiao." Sect leader Qiao hastily said, "Since you are Xinren's disciple, you are our Zhongtai's honored guest. We dare not treat you poorly." Zhang Yan took a step back and bade farewell. Then, he flicked his sleeve and a sword light flew out. The sword light circled around him and wrapped him in a ball of clear light. Then, it turned into an escape light and flew away. When he reached the extreme sky, he identified the direction and flew all the way to the northwest. In less than half a day, he saw another dragon pillar in the distance. It was no different from the one in the southwest. The white pillar pierced straight into the clouds, and there were dozens of flying peaks surrounding it. After he circled around it a few times, he rode the astral wind and landed on the cloud. There were several disciples on duty at Zhongtai. The highest cultivation level was only at core formation. When they saw a Yuanying cultivator, they were all terrified. One of them braced himself and came forward. He bowed and said, "This is the forbidden area of Zhongtai. May I know which spiritual master is here? Please stay." Zhang Yan put his sleeves behind his back and said, "I am in charge of Mount Shenwu's Hanyuan sect. Sect leader Qiao has asked us to guard this dragon pillar. You can go back." The disciple was shocked and said, "So it is spiritual master Zhang?" As a disciple of Zhongtai, he had also heard of Zhang Yan's reputation. He knew that even the sect leader and a group of elders were polite in front of him. He did not dare to doubt him and retreated. He called out to the others and left with a few of his fellow disciples without looking back. Zhang Yan slowly descended. Not long after, he arrived at the entrance of the underground palace. He looked at it attentively for a while and knew that the prohibition here would disappear in 10 days or at most a month. He thought for a while and found a big rock nearby to sit down. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing, waiting for the day the prohibition would be lifted. At this moment, on the other side, Daoist Ji had lost the 9 yellow star bead. Although he felt a trace of fear in his heart, he was extremely unwilling to return empty-handed. Seeing that no one was chasing after him, he had other thoughts. He recalled that when he left, there was a huge commotion behind him. He thought to himself, maybe something happened at the dragon pillar, so the 4 sects did not send people to chase after me? His guess was already very close to the truth. However, he was used to being cautious. After waiting for a few more days, no one came. He was even more certain of his guess. He gathered his courage and turned back to watch from afar. With his knowledge, it was not difficult to tell that the dragon pillar's prohibition was dissipating. Seeing that there were Zhongtai disciples patrolling everywhere, he guessed that there must be some arrangement. After weighing the pros and cons, he took the risk and sneaked in. After carefully investigating for a few days, he found that each sect had sent people to guard a dragon pillar. He could not help but think, no wonder they did not chase after me. So this is the reason. If this is the case, I may be able to find an opportunity to get another 9 Huang Star Pearl. However, he could not do it alone. After thinking for a long time, he retreated and found a hidden valley. He went deep into the mountain and opened a few caves underground. After confirming that there was no danger, he sent a letter and sat down to meditate. This place was not far from the dragon pillar. Less than 300 miles away, there were Zhongtai disciples patrolling. However, they did not expect that the person who stole the treasure was hiding nearby. A few days later, someone fell into the valley. After searching for a while, he said softly, "Is Jinren here?" "Chu Changji is here on my master's order." After saying it a few times, a white light came out from a crack in the rock. It rose 5 to 6 feet high and split into two. Ji Daoren appeared. He looked at him and said coldly, "Daoist Hui Xian is still so careful. I invited him to come personally in the letter but only ordered my disciple to come. Could it be that you are afraid that my old friend will harm him?" Chu Changji bowed deeply and said, "Jinren, you have misunderstood. After all, my master has to avoid the four sects' pursuit. I have to be careful." Ji Daoren sneered, "There is no need for that. Your master and I have guessed wrongly. Zhongtai and the three sects of South Continent did not send anyone after us." Chu Changji was surprised. He cupped his hands and said respectfully, "My master has told me that if Jinren Yun has any orders, please let me know." Ji Daoren snorted and said, "I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to do anything. You just need to go back and tell fellow Daoist Hui Xian that there are signs of the remaining 7 dragon pillars being unlocked. Now that the 4 major sects are afraid of losing it, their manpower is probably staring at that place. I have an idea that might let fellow Daoist Hui Xian get what he wants." Chu Changji said, "Jinren, can you tell me?" Ji Daoren sneered, "You are not important enough. I need Hui Xian to discuss this with me personally. Just go back and tell him what I said." After that, he flicked his sleeves and went back into the cave. Chu Changji stood in silence for a while. He bowed at him and left in a ray of light. Ji Daoren waited for 7 to 8 days. Just when he was about to lose his patience, an inconspicuous cloud of smoke floated over from outside the mountain. He identified the qi in the cave and came out from his hiding place. He said unhappily, "Daoist Hui Xian, why are you so late?" The cloud of smoke gathered in the middle and revealed the appearance of Patriarch Hui Xian. He cupped his hands and said, "Daoist Ji, please don't blame me. When I came to see Elder Zhong Tai Yen, I had to stay outside for a few days to prevent him from noticing me. I wonder if you managed to get the 9 yellow pearl back after we parted that day." Ji Daoren's face froze. He said, "I don't know what spirit returning sect did to the pearl. I couldn't get it in time. I miscalculated." Hui Xian looked regretful and said, "What a pity." Daoist Ji waved his sleeves and said, "Let's cut to the chase. This treasure is very important to me, and I'm not willing to lose it. Today, I've sought you out because I want you to help me obtain another one." When Patriarch Hui Xian heard this, he said in a deep voice, "Ji Daoren, is this going against our previous agreement?" Ji Daoren looked at him and said, "Daoist Hui Xian, what you are after is to get rid of that Daoist Zhang. Now that I found out that this person is looking at the Qian position dragon pillar alone, it's a rare opportunity. I will help you to kill this person and I can also get the pearl. Isn't this killing 2 birds with 1 stone?" Patriarch Hui Xian hesitated. According to his original plan, he would first choose the location of the battle and then use the news of the 3 elixirs to lure Zhang Yan out. This would be the same as taking advantage of the right time, place and people. He could make use of his advantage to the maximum. Although Ji Daoren's suggestion was somewhat feasible, it was too risky. After deliberating for a long time, he said, "There are 2 difficulties. First, the supernatural power that priest Zhang possesses is not a small matter. Just the 2 of us may not be able to subdue him, but if we were to go now, the master of Shaotsang Jing might not be willing to come. Second, this journey requires us to go to the northwest dragon pillar. If we fail, we can only go north." Ji Daoren had long expected that he would have such concerns and said leisurely, "If we wait for that Daoist Zhang to get the 9 Huang pearl and after he understands the profoundness within, it would be even more difficult to kill him in the future. Moreover, even if we fail, at most we can go to the Python tribe. Isn't Daoist friend on good terms with them?" Patriarch Hui Xian's brows furrowed. Looking at this stance, the other party would definitely not help him without the 9 Huang Pearl. Previously, because he had other motives, he did not sign the contract. But now it seemed that he had miscalculated. Because he did not have much lifespan left, the other party could afford to wait, but he could not. And this opportunity was hard to come by. After considering for a long time, he finally nodded and said, "All right, there might be a chance this time." Daoran agreed, but the 2 of us are not enough. We need to find a few more people to help. Ji Daoran said, "Who is it?" Patriarch Hui Xian said, "Do you remember that Lian Nyangzi that I mentioned to you before?" Ji Daoran said in surprise, "Isn't she unwilling to come with you previously? Has she already left? Why mention her again?" Patriarch Hui Xian originally wanted to invite Lian Nyangzi to steal the treasure together so that he could make use of her identity as the Zhongtai sect leader's concubine to frame Qiao Huanzhuan. But this woman was obviously not easy to get along with. Seeing that he was using her as a chess piece, she agreed on the surface but secretly left. Patriarch Hui Xian said coldly, "That is Daoran purposely letting her go so that we can find out who is helping her in the dark. Now that I know clearly where she is, I will not allow her to not give in." Chapter 721. P.S. On the 5th day of the new year, congratulations on getting rich. After guarding under the Qian Dragon Pillar for half a month, Zhang Yan heard a series of rumbling sounds coming from it. Judging from the previous situation, it meant that the restrictive formation was gradually loosening and the opening of the mansion was imminent. He couldn't help but look up. After a short while, a clear stream seemed to wash over them, and the original scenery in front of them disappeared in the blink of an eye. A stone tablet that was about 20 feet long and 70 feet wide appeared on the ground. There were hundreds of inscriptions engraved on the surface of the tablet. He raised his eyebrows, took a few glances, and deciphered it effortlessly. He said thoughtfully, "Spirit returning sect." After pondering for a moment, he raised his sleeve and waved it. A gust of strong wind blew the stone slab to one side, revealing a deep pit under his feet. He sensed that the spiritual energy inside the room was disorderly. It should have been caused by the collapse of the original restriction. After confirming that there was no danger, Zhang Xian descended without any hesitation. Perhaps others might be afraid that the outside world would use some sort of method to seal the entrance and exit, but he had the 5 elements escape technique. If there wasn't a formation underground, it wouldn't be able to trap him. Not long after he went down, the Li Dragon Pillar in the south also shook. Mao Wuwei, who was watching over this place, did not seem to notice anything. He was still sleeping soundly on the big rock. The pure white Jinren came up and said softly, "Senior apprentice brother, the prohibition spell below has been opened." Mao Wuwei made an "oh" sound and said, "Let me see." He sat up on the rock and stretched his waist. Then, he jumped down energetically and arrived in front of the pit. He stuck his head out to take a look and found that the entrance to the cave was funnel-shaped. It opened at the top and closed at the bottom until it reached the bottom. It was like a well that could barely allow one person to pass through. After a while, he waved his hand and called Jinren Qing and Jinren Shancheng to the front. He said, "My 2 junior martial brothers, one of you will bring a few disciples to guard the exit of the mountain. The other will go to the high heaven. No matter who comes, block them for me." This dragon pillar was located in the south. The Wuchuan River was just over 100 miles away. There were 2 big mountains in the shape of a big bird spreading its wings, protecting the dragon pillar. There was only a narrow pass between the mountains for people to pass through. This was originally the land of Xianyu, but due to the special terrain, it was another dangerous place. Therefore, there were dozens of altars on the mountain. There were spells and restrictions everywhere. Cultivators couldn't cross the world unless they walked on the extreme heaven. Otherwise, even birds would find it difficult to cross. There was an immortal city called the Great Room, and it just happened to block the entrance. Thus, the security was extremely tight, and it was completely different from the other dragon pillars. As soon as the 2 Jinren and a few disciples left, only the pure white Jinren was left. He went closer to Mao Wuwei and said, Xixiang, little brother has something I don't understand, but it's not convenient for me to ask. Now I want to consult Xixiang. Mao Wuwei could hear the strong resentment in his voice. He laughed and said, you still don't know what you are planning. Are you wondering why Ku Xian School and Fengxiang Sword School can each take 2 places, but I only chose 1 place? Exactly. The pure white Jinren was unconvinced and said, Qing Xian sect is also one of the 3 sects in the South Continent. Maybe it's not as glorious as Fengxiang and Ku Xian, but in terms of disciples and roots, we are not worse than these 2 sections. Why do they have such a big advantage, and Qing Xian sect has to suffer losses? Mao Wuwei squinted at him and said, you want to eat 2 dragon pillars in 1 bite? You have a big appetite, but I'm afraid you can't take it. The pure white Jinren was surprised and asked, why? Mao Wuwei said, I don't know how many cultivators from the Fengxiang sword sect are here, but I think there should be quite a number of them, and there should be quite a number of missing pearls as well. As for my Qing Xian sect, we only have a dozen or so people. We must unite together in order to protect ourselves. If we covet the 2 dragon pillars, it would be like opening a fist without any strength, giving others an opportunity to take advantage of. The pure white Jinren was shocked and said in a low voice, Xixiang, you mean there are external enemies here? Mao Wuwei snorted and shook his head, it's hard to say, but there's no harm in being careful. You just need to be more alert. Then, he pointed to the pit and said, go inside and check it out. If there's any treasure, bring it out. If there's none, it's okay, as long as you keep yourself safe. The pure white Jinren said, all right, I'll be back soon. He bowed and jumped into the hole. After waiting for more than 2 hours, a white light flashed at the entrance of the hole. He held an item in his hand and rushed out with an excited expression. He said excitedly, Xixiang, look what I've found. He spread out his hand, and there was a square wooden box in his palm. He opened it slowly and revealed a round green jade bead. The moment the lid of the box was opened, a ray of treasure light shone out, illuminating the area within a few feet. It was obviously a rare treasure, especially the spiritual vigor that surged like a boundless sea. Among all the treasures that Mao Wuwei had seen in his life, there were few that could compare. He widened his eyes and exclaimed, what a treasure! The pure white Jinren said excitedly, Xixiang, since you've got the treasure, why don't you go back to the mountain? Mao Wuwei waved his hand and said, what's the hurry? You're in such a hurry. Are you afraid that people don't know that you found a great treasure? The pure white Jinren slapped his forehead and said, it's my oversight. Mao Wuwei thought for a while. He closed the lid of the box, took it and put it into his sleeve. He thought to himself, I have this treasure bead here. I don't know what He Yizhu and Qin Yuan found, but it shouldn't be too bad. As he was thinking, his sleeve suddenly shook and something strange happened. His chest felt like it was hit by a fierce hammer. He couldn't help but take a step back and almost couldn't catch his breath. He thought to himself, not good. With just a thought, his body suddenly turned into a conveyance light and flew back. At the same time, the treasure light was activated to protect his whole body. When he looked again, he saw that the thing that attacked him just now was actually the green bead. At this moment, it had followed him like a shadow and was colliding with the treasure light. It seemed to be crazy and kept making violent sounds, as if it wanted to break in. The pure white Jinren finally reacted. He threw out a small seal and with a bang, it was knocked back. When he looked at it, he found that it was missing a small corner. He immediately felt distressed. When he looked at the green bead again, he saw that it was not damaged at all. Mao Wuwei shouted, Xixiang, don't use treasures. You and I will work together to take it. The green bead seemed to realize that it couldn't get its hands on it and suddenly jumped back. It wanted to escape to the sky. How could Mao Wuwei allow it to escape? The high cloud above their heads spun and they reached out to grab it. Together, they used their mana to pull it back in the sky. But the green bead was very strong and kept struggling. After a while, the two felt that they couldn't do what they wanted. Mao Wuwei made a prompt decision and said, Xixiang, don't let it go. Escape from Yuanying with me. The pure white Jinren responded. The two shouted in unison. With two booming sounds, a ray of light rushed up from the fontanelle. In the smoke, two nascent souls flashing with azure light flew out. Both were about 10 feet tall. Light bells hung on their bodies and white clouds were under their feet. As soon as Yuanying came out, the two's mana suddenly increased. They chanted the incantation and a dazzling halo of light floated down from their bodies and fell on the green bead. Only then did it gradually suppress it. After about a moment, the bead finally stopped moving. But the two still didn't dare to let down their guard. They carefully took it and put it into a copper cup. Then, they stuck several talismans on it and put it into their sleeves. Only then did they relax. A figure flashed and the pure white Jinren rushed to Mao Wuwei's side and asked anxiously, "Shixiang, are you hurt?" Mao Wuwei pointed to his chest. The dirty outer robe was torn, revealing a black soft shirt inside. "Fortunately, I have the swollen corner robe to block it. I won't die. Just now, the accident happened so close at hand. He couldn't guard against it at all. If he wasn't wearing this precious robe that no one knew about, his life would be in danger." He rubbed his chest and said, "This bead looks evil. It's not a righteous one. Did you see anything strange down there?" The pure white Jinren showed a frightened expression and said, "I was about to tell Shixiang that there are more than 10,000 dried corpses down there. I don't know which sect they belong to." Mao Wuwei's expression was a little serious. But after a while, he suddenly laughed. The pure white Jinren was surprised and asked, "Shixiang, what are you laughing at?" Mao Wuwei gloated and said, "I was thinking that if it's not easy to get the treasures here, then it's not easy to get the treasures under the underground palace. If Qin Yuan and He Yizhu are not careful, I'm afraid they will also suffer." At the same time, there was a sudden scream above the Gen-rank dragon pillar. A green light flew up from the flat ground and went to the sky. In a moment, it broke through the sky and disappeared without a trace. He Yizhu looked at the dried corpses on the ground with a gloomy face. The disciples of the Ku Xian faction beside her were still in shock. The Ku Xian faction was good at refining medicine and using elixirs as spells. But they were far behind the Qing Xian faction and the Fengxiang faction in terms of adaptability. Just now, when they took out the bead, they were not on guard, and the lives of several disciples and an elder were taken. Although they tried to catch it later, it was still a step too late and it still escaped. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the north. An elder reminded, "Faction Master, I'm afraid the restriction of the Kendragon pillar has been removed." He Yizhu exhaled, then stomped his feet and said, "Let's go." In an instant, he turned into a conveyance light and flew away. Quantum Inn, Nanwu Mountain, Qin Country. Zhang Boyan stood on a high pavilion. His eyes flashed with green light, and he kept looking around. This was the highest place in the whole of Quantum Inn. From here, he could see the situation of the mountain gate at a glance. In the past half a month, the poisonous miasma that originally covered this place had somehow weakened a little, and it was showing signs of disappearing. Everyone in the sect was happy, and he didn't have to refine the antidote anymore for a few days. But not only did he not feel relaxed, he felt that the surroundings were full of danger, as if he was shrouded by a gloomy and evil aura, which made people tremble. Now, under the urging of Shang Junqing, Fengxiang Sword School sent a group of cultivators to refine the underground restriction day and night. Looking at the situation, they would be able to dissolve the restriction within a year. Zhang Boyan thought to himself, "I can't stay here for long. Tomorrow, I need to say goodbye and return to the mountain gate to meet the manor master and report what happened here." At this moment, he suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. Looking up, he saw the astral clouds surging above the sky pole. Then, a vortex suddenly split open, and a green brilliance broke through the clouds, falling straight down. However, before it landed on the ground, a sudden shout came from within the mountain gate. A shadow-like sword light flew up and collided with the green light. There seemed to be a clap of thunder in the air, and the sword light rolled back. However, the brilliance only deviated slightly, and its momentum did not decrease. With a rumble, it smashed through a large hall and into the ground, leaving only a pile of roof tiles and rubble. Chapter 722. Shang Qingjun appeared in the air and took the 100-shadow sword with a wave of his hand. However, his face was filled with surprise. Just now, he saw an object flying over from the sky. If it was someone else, they would check it out, but he was arrogant and did not think much about it. He slashed at it with his sword, but he did not expect that not only did his 100-shadow sword not do anything, it was also knocked back. This made him feel extremely embarrassed. Hearing the commotion outside, Dean Go Su Min and the 2 pavilion masters flew out. When they were in the air, they saw that a corner of the hall had collapsed. They did not know what to do, so they turned around and asked, "Envoy, what happened?" The battle just now had only lasted for a short moment, so Shang Qingjun hadn't clearly seen what had flown over. However, he couldn't bring himself to say that he didn't know, so he could only pretend to be calm and grunted coldly. "A sneaky thing came over here just now, and I've already injured it. Now it has fled underground. Find it for me, don't disturb the opening of the restriction." Go Su Min and Sun Chu looked at each other and nodded. They cupped their hands together and left. Back in the hall, Go Su Min secretly called out to Sun Chu and said, "Junior apprentice brother, why do I feel a little uneasy?" Sun Chu said, "Senior apprentice brother, the poisonous miasma has disappeared. As long as we open the restriction, we will have completed our mission. Moreover, Envoy is here, what else can happen?" Go Su Min shook his head and said, "The poisonous miasma came and went very suddenly. Just now, another strange thing has come. Who knows what will happen in a few days? For the sake of our sect, we need to be on guard." Sun Chu said, "Then what do you think I should do, senior apprentice brother?" Go Su Min said, "A few days ago, I invited Zhang Zhang to drink wine and admire the moon. From his words, it seems that he has the intention to leave. I want to invite him to bring a few talented disciples to the North Continent, and then bring the Central Dao books. If there are any changes here, it would be good for our Quantum to preserve our orthodoxy." Sun Chu was slightly surprised and said, "Senior brother, things haven't come to this, right?" Go Su Min looked at the damaged hall behind her and said, "It's always good to have a way out." Sun Chu lowered his head in thought. After a long time, he said, "Little brother will go and talk to Mr. Zhang." Just as he was about to leave, another whistling sound came from the sky. The 2 of them looked over in surprise, only to see a green light flying down from the sky. Before he landed on the ground, the 100-shadow sword was pulled out. He rushed up and exchanged blows with it several times in the sky. Countless sparks flew out like fireworks. However, this time, it seemed like his side was still at a disadvantage. The sword circle was forcefully broken by the green light. It was thrown into the ground. However, with such a delay, everyone with sharp eyes could see clearly what was attacking. It was a pearl that shone with a green light. Shang Qingjun was attacked by the pearl twice in a row. He was exasperated and shouted, "Go Su Min, quickly call people over and dig the bottom for me." At this moment, Zhang Boyan, who was in the pavilion, had a dim light flashing in his eyes. As the 2 items were thrown into the ground, the poisonous miasma could no longer be sensed. However, the sense of danger was even stronger. Thus, he deduced, this pearl might have something to do with the changes that happened in the past few days. It seems like there will be a huge change in this place soon. I need to inform the chief first. After thinking for a long time, he took out a pen and paper from his sleeve and wrote down everything he saw. Then, he sealed it and sent it out. After Zhang Yan entered the pit, he followed the tunnel deep into the cave. After walking for 4 hours, he arrived at a huge underground palace. He stepped in and looked around. There were more than 10,000 Taoists sitting cross-legged on the ground. There were 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, surrounding an altar in the middle. The altar was about 3 feet high and there was a curtain hanging down from it. At the top, there was a golden gourd. At the four corners, there were spiritual beasts that were half a foot long. They were divided into white dragon, auspicious phoenix, green goat, and golden carp. The curtain was decorated with gold and jade flowers. Clear glass shone brightly and bright pearls shone brightly. He could faintly see a few blurry figures inside. With a tap of his feet, he flew over and landed on the altar in the blink of an eye. As soon as he landed, he saw that the ground was littered with broken jade and porcelain. Some of them could still be vaguely recognized. They were originally used to store pills. After a few glances, he seemed to be deep in thought. Then, he waved his sleeve and took a few steps forward. He raised his hand and lifted the curtain. He felt a brilliance jump into his eyes. Less than 5 steps away, there was a golden toad lying on the ground. It had protruding eyes and a bright pearl in its mouth. Its brilliance was like a flame, flickering and dazzling, filling up the inner tent. Opposite it was a crane with a crooked neck. There was still smoke coming out of its long beak. His gaze did not stop. He looked past the crane and the toad and looked back. He saw a dragon-patterned soft couch. On it sat a middle-aged Taoist with his eyes closed. He had a square mouth and a straight nose. He was tall and strong. On his head was a Pai Xiu crown. He was dressed in a purple robe. He looked dignified and dignified. He was the most respected person here. Behind him stood 2 beautiful women. Both of them were dressed in white without any accessories. Their hair covered their faces, and their faces couldn't be seen clearly. Their hands were clasped in front of their abdomens, and each of them held a green pearl that emitted a faint glow in the empty hall. Anyone that came here would be able to discern that these 2 jade pearls were precious treasures. However, Zhang Yan wasn't impatient to take them, and he instead swept his gaze back and forth a few times before his gaze finally descended onto an inconspicuous jade slip on the couch. He gently raised his hand. The jade slip flew into the air and fell into his palm. He inserted a stream of spiritual energy into it. In the blink of an eye, he read the contents of the jade slip. It was a cultivation method for cultivating qi. It was written in eroded characters. It looked very profound and profound. He could feel that there was an even more profound method hidden in the jade slip. However, if he did not practice this method well, he would not be able to read the rest. However, he had the Supreme Mystery True technique with him, so he didn't have to switch to another technique. Moreover, those who practiced this technique might not necessarily have an advantage. The karma involved in this technique was bound to be taken over. Although he wasn't afraid, he wouldn't do something that would be of no benefit to him. After pondering for a while, he kept the jade scroll and bowed to the middle-aged Taoist. If I meet someone in the future who is fated to learn this, I will pass on this technique to your sect to repay you for taking your sect's treasure. Sorry for offending you. After saying that, he waved his hand and took the 2 green pearls from afar. He was about 5-6 shang away from the soft couch. At first, the 2 pearls were still docile, but halfway there, as if they were activated, they abruptly scuttled forward, emitting a mournful whistling sound, unexpectedly revealing a vicious state. A glint flashed in Zhang Yan's eyes. His body did not move, but a mighty force surged out and firmly suppressed the 2 pearls. No matter how they whimpered, they were unable to advance a single step forward. Then, he casually rolled up his sleeve and kept them. After getting the pearls, he did not touch anything else and returned to the surface. At the same time, there were 2 conveyance lights in front of the Qian position dragon pillar. They carefully circled above the pit but did not approach it. Instead, they retreated far away and stopped behind a mountain ridge. Then, they revealed themselves. It was Ji Daoren and Hui Xian Grand Elder. Ji Daoren pointed at the cave door in front of him and said, "Brother Hui Xian, what do you think of what I said?" That Taoist Zhang went down the underground palace. When he comes up later, he will definitely pass by here. This person relies on his mysterious Taoist skills and flying sword skills. If we let him attack calmly, even if he is not our match, he can still escape. Therefore, we need to ambush in front of the cave door. When he comes up, we will attack together and we will definitely be able to severely injure him. Hui Xian Grand Elder could also see the benefits. Zhang Yan was good at escaping, and choosing this moment to attack could indeed not weaken his advantage. However, he was not as optimistic as Ji Daoren. He calmly judged, since this person dares to go down alone, how can he not take precautions? If he doesn't hit the target and retreats, are we supposed to stand guard here? If it was in the past, they would not be afraid of this method. At most, they could imitate Patriarch Daimu and use a forbidden formation to seal this place. They would definitely be able to trap the person below. However, firstly, they did not dare to stay in Zhongtai's territory for long. Secondly, they still wanted to snatch the 9 yellow star bead that Zhang Yan had obtained. Thus, they definitely could not do that. Ji Daoren said, "How would I not know of fellow Taoists' worries? We can first set up formation flags in the surroundings. We do not hope to injure him but only hope to trap him for a moment. Then there will be a chance. At most, we can send another person to block his escape route and it will be foolproof." Hui Xian Grand Elder still frowned. He did not believe that it would be so easy to injure Zhang Yan. Therefore, he stroked his beard and did not speak for a long time. Ji Daoren took a few glances at him and said with some dissatisfaction, "Why is fellow Taoist so afraid of the slightest thing? Both you and I are traveling with our Dharmakayas. Even if we fail, we can just cast spells to return to our bodies. If we succeed, we can fulfill our long-cherished wish." When Hui Xian Grand Elder heard this, he thought of the fact that he did not have much lifespan left. He sighed and nodded reluctantly. "All right, let's set up according to fellow Taoist's suggestion." At this moment, 3 flowing lights flew over from the sky. He raised his head and said, "My disciple has arrived." 3 flowing lights flew over in a flash and landed on the ground. When the brilliance dispersed, Chu Changji walked out first and cupped his hands together. "Teacher, disciple has already invited Lian Nyangzi and Elder Yu over." Hui Xian Grand Elder said, "Did you reveal any traces along the way?" Chu Changji said, "Disciple was afraid that the matter would be leaked, so I specially made a detour. Zhongtai is mostly guarding their own dragon pillars. The northwest dragon pillar is 1,000 miles away and no one has noticed us." Hui Xian Grand Elder nodded his head and looked behind him. Lian Nyangzi's expression was not good. There was another person standing beside her. He had a head full of silver hair and there was a cloud floating above his head. Although his cultivation was not high, but standing there, his aura was not any weaker than anyone here. Ji Daoren looked up and down and sneered, "I was wondering who it was. So it is you, Bingyi. No wonder no one came to investigate when you took in Xiao Huanzhuan as a concubine. The influence of the ancestors is indeed useful. The Yu clan was originally the kin of founding Master Daimu. Their clansmen were spread all over Dongsheng and Northland. With this layer of relationship, Zhongtai was respectful to them on the surface but was secretly on guard against them. But it was also because of this that they avoided the Dragon Pillar battle and preserved the vitality of the clan." Elder Yu took a look at him and said sarcastically, "I heard that Fu Yang's sect has a spiritual master Ji Song. He was one of the few great cultivators in this sect. But on the day when the mountain gate was broken by the 5 sects, he abandoned the humans in this sect and left without a care. Today, I finally see him in person." The 2 of them were at each other's throats. Hui Xian Grand Elder came up to mediate. "Daoist brother Ji, this time we are working together against the enemy, we are all from the same family." Ji Daoren sneered, "I don't know what this person is capable of." Elder Yu's gaze flickered and he said, "This time to deal with that Daoist Zhang, I opened the incense table and invited the talisman bestowed by my ancestor. I wonder if this is enough." Chapter 723. When Ji Daoren heard Elder Yu mention his ancestor's magic treasure, he was also moved. He took a few steps back and said in a low voice, "Could it be the Qiyuan Constitution painting?" Elder Yu's expression was slightly reserved as he said, "I didn't expect fellow Daoist Ji to have heard of it." How could Ji Daoren not know about it? The Qiyuan Constitution painting was passed down by Master Dami. Sealed inside were the 3 divine power edicts that Master Dami personally cast before he ascended. They were divided into 3 edicts: break, guard, and fix. They were given to the younger generation to protect their lives. Thinking of this, he didn't dare to underestimate this person anymore. But he didn't know that although the edicts were powerful, they had already used 2 after thousands of years. The guard edict was tricked by Elder Jinzhong when Zhongtai first opened the sect. As for the break edict, it was used to deal with the corpse cult's magic treasure, the lifeless treasure coffin. Under the pressure of Zhongtai and Xianyue sects, Yu clan had no choice but to take it out. Now, they only had the most inconspicuous fix edict in their hands. Elder Yu didn't come this time because he was threatened by Hui Xian. In the past, when the 2 powers of the North Continent stood side by side, Yu clan could still deal with the 2 sections. But after the 2 sects merged into one, their position was somewhat awkward. Especially after Xianyue lost in the battle, Chunyuji had sent people to secretly plot. Later, Zhongtai seemed to have noticed and his attitude towards Yu clan became colder and colder. He even found a chance to expel many cultivators with the surname Yu. Under such circumstances, Yu clan was also eager to protect themselves. They originally had the intention to rely on the 3 sects of the south. But after thousands of years, the clan's foundation was in the north, and they couldn't just abandon it. Just as they were hesitating, Hui Xian ancestor told them about the plan to enter the continent. Without any other way out, they wanted to try to ally with him. In order to show their sincerity, they came to kill Zhang Yan together. Hui Xian ancestor said, that Daoist Zhang will probably come out soon. Let's not delay and set up the formation flags first. Since this plan was suggested by fellow Ji, I believe you are already prepared. Setting up the array flags was not an easy task. It also required a clever concealment technique. Otherwise, the person being schemed against would sense that something was amiss and be prepared in advance, making it very difficult to succeed. Ji Daoren didn't say anything. Instead, he lifted his sleeve and took out a formation flag. He shook it against the wind and unfurled the flag. It wasn't an ordinary flag that was about half a foot long. Instead, it was about 5 feet long, almost as tall as a person. He stroked the golden embroidered flag with his hand and murmured an incantation. Soon, a cloud of black mist emerged from his palm. In the blink of an eye, the flag was dyed black and couldn't be seen anymore. He handed it over and said, I have used a secret technique in my sect to refine this. When I set up the formation, I will use this as the main flag. If one's cultivation is not higher than mine, they will not be able to detect it. Hui Xian took it and fiddled with it for a moment before passing it to Chu Changji and said, You and Lian Nyangzi go and arrange it together. Lady Lian curled her lips and said, This servant doesn't know how to play with formation flags. Hui Xian elder said, Lian Nyangzi must be joking. The Lian family is a big clan of Dongsheng and there was once a formation master in the sect. How can a mere formation flag be a problem for you? Please do it quickly. Although he looked amiable on the surface, the words that came out of his mouth were unquestionable. Ji Daoren said coldly, If you don't obey, that means you are not willing to put in any effort. What's the use of keeping you? Lady Lian shuddered. Her expression changed a few times before she finally chose to submit. She bit her lips and took the formation flag before turning to leave. Hui Xian elder said to Chu Changji, Go up and keep an eye on this girl. Keep a close eye on her and don't let her do anything. Chu Changji nodded his head and followed. Lian Nyangzi was indeed an expert. In less than a dozen breaths, he had determined the position and laid out the hundreds of formation flags. He linked them together to form a formation full of hidden danger. Finally, he tossed the main flag into the formation. All the spiritual energy was concealed and not the slightest trace of it could be seen. After the two of them returned, Hui Xian elder said to Chu Changji again, Disciple, once he comes out later and is restrained by fellow Taoist Yu's spell, you will go up and cut off his escape route. After instructing, he turned his head and said to Lady Lian amiably, Lian Nyangzi has just entered Yuanying and your talisman is not suitable for you. Fighting head-on is not your forte. You just have to keep an eye on the situation above and see if there are any outsiders here. If there is a chance, you can make a move to restrain him. Lady Lian originally thought that this person wanted her to fight at the front, and in that case, she would definitely die. She did not expect him to be so easy to talk to. Although she did not understand the intention behind this, it was more than what she wished for. She said, "This servant understands." She curtsied and rode the wind towards the sky. Ji Daoren said coldly, "I see that this girl is resisting. With such arrangements, aren't you afraid that she will take advantage of the chaos to escape?" Hui Xian elder chuckled and said, "With the restriction that this girl personally set up here, no matter the success or failure of the matter today, she will not be able to escape responsibility. Moreover, the Yu family has already joined hands with us. Even if she escapes, where can she go?" Elder Yu interrupted, "It does not matter if Lady Lian is here or not. With my ancestor's edict here, do you still have to worry about not being able to take care of that Daoist Zhang?" Hui Xian elder smiled and said, "As what fellow Daoist said, that Daoist Zhang will definitely not be able to resist Daoist Zhang's edict. But it is not a bad thing to take extra precautions." Elder Yu's eyebrows raised. From his point of view, this was just an unnecessary move. Once this edict is issued, it can fix a person on the spot and no talisman or Dao technique can be used. But since he insisted on it, he did not say any more. The few of them discussed for a while, and to prevent Zhang Yan from sensing their qi activity, they all retreated far away. Once he came out, they would make their move. At this moment, Zhang Yan was returning to the surface, but he did not go back the way he came. Just now when he came, he was in case he missed something, so he followed the prescribed order and followed the path. Now that he came out, there was no need to do so. He used the earth escape technique and went straight up. Not long after, he escaped out of the underground palace. This place was 2 miles away from the pit he came from, but he inadvertently avoided that restriction. With a flick of his sleeves, he rode the strong wind and flew towards the sky. He had not gone far when his expression changed. He sensed several qi activity lying in wait at the side. There were even a few that he was familiar with. His thoughts turned and he smiled coldly. He slowed down his body and turned around. Casting his gaze down, he said, "I wonder which fellow Daoist is here to welcome I." When Elder Hui Xian and Ji Daoren saw that he did not go back the way he came, they knew something was wrong. Now that he had exposed their whereabouts, it was obvious that they could not act according to their original plan. Both of them were not people who would lose their composure in the face of a battle. Since the previous plan did not work, then they could only turn the dark into the light. They leaped out from their hiding places and surrounded him as they slowly came forward. Zhang Yan's gaze turned and saw that among the 4 people in front of him, other than the white-clothed Daoist, Elder Hui Xian, Chu Changji and Elder Yu were old acquaintances. He smiled and said, "It is indeed acquaintances. I see that all of you have killing intent in your hearts. I believe you are not here to reminisce." Elder Hui Xian sighed and said, "Fellow Daoist Zhang, you can cultivate in the Shenwu mountain. We will not make things difficult for you. It is just that you have interfered in the matters of the 2 sects and hindered our great plan. If you are willing to make a vow that after you return, you will close your residence and ignore the secular affairs, I can make the decision to let you go. What do you think?" Chu Changji did not speak at the side. He was originally following his master's lead and naturally had no objections. As for Elder Yu, he was invited by Elder Hui Xian to do his best as an ally. But if there was no need to fight to the death, of course he would be happy to see it happen. Ji Daoren was anxious. His purpose of coming here was to snatch the 9 yellow star pearl. If Zhang Yan really agreed to the matter, Elder Hui Xian might let him go. Then how would he be able to snatch the pearl by himself? Therefore, he would not allow that to happen. Without waiting for Zhang Yan to speak, he suddenly shouted and struck a golden light over. At the same time, he said, "Why are you talking so much with him? Attack!" But just as he made his move, he suddenly caught a glimpse of Elder Huixian's calm expression, as if he had already expected that he would do so. He was stunned at first and then suddenly came to a realization. He secretly scolded, "Old fox. Why would Elder Huixian want to reconcile?" It was obvious that he did not want to be the first to fight. So he purposely said those words to provoke him to go forward first. But he was not aware of it and fell into Doran's trick. However, since he'd made a move, he was unable to shrink back, so he could only secretly remember this debt and settle it in the future. He snorted and seized the opportunity when the treasure struck out to shake his shoulder, causing the vital energy in the surroundings to change, and he'd already executed the heaven and earth restriction technique. Chu Changji and Elder Yu were not to be outdone. At the same time, they struck out the talismans that they had long prepared. The former struck out a white light. The tip was 3 feet high and the tail was 10 feet long. It was wide at the front and narrow at the back. There was a small silver bean the size of a thumb in it. If one did not look carefully, it would be difficult to see it clearly. The latter, on the other hand, was a dozen or so hexagonal spears. They spun around in a blur. From the outside, they looked like cold flames. At this moment, only Elder Huixian did not make a move. He stared at Zhang Yan motionlessly, as if he was looking for a good opportunity. Zhang Yan saw a golden light fly near him. Before he could block it, he felt his body sink. He knew that the other party had used the heaven and earth imprisonment technique. He had fought several times with third-layer nascent soul cultivators, so he was already prepared. He calmly guided his flying sword, and the sword light leaped out, suddenly exploding like a rainbow. In an instant, several tens of sword lights splashed out, blocking all the magic treasures. Not only that, with a thought, another 10 sword lights turned around and flew towards the 4 people to kill. Daoist Ji opened his mouth and spat out a copper stick from his abdomen. It had a pointed tip, a square tail, and a hole at the top. When it reached the top of the sky, he shook it and a waterfall of fine threads burst forth like spider silk. The threads flew up and wrapped around the sword light. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed slightly. He could see that there was something strange about this item. He did not persist and with a thought, he retracted the sword lights. Ji Daoren snorted. This item of his was the 1,000 snare heart thread. It was made from the silk of a 1,000-year white spider and the frozen mud of the ground lake. It was best used against swords. Once entangled by it, one would not be able to break free in a short period of time. He had thought that Zhang Yan did not know about it so he could scheme against him. In this way, he would be able to break his sword escape technique. The battle afterwards would be much easier. He did not think that the other party would not lose his caution and did not fall into the trap. He turned his head and said, "Why are you still not making a move?" On the surface, he was shouting at Elder Huixian. But in reality, he was urging Elder Yu to use the Imperial Statuary Diagram. At this moment, Elder Yu was also anxious. The Imperial Statuary Diagram could only be activated when he was within 300 feet. But his cultivation was only at the first layer of Yuanying. At this moment, he was also enveloped by the Forbidden Lock technique. His movement was not as smooth as usual. Although it was not targeted at him, it was still extremely strenuous. Elder Huixian saw that and saw his difficulty. He flew forward and patted his back, transmitting his voice, "Fellow Daoist Yu, quickly make a move." Elder Yu felt a spirit enter his body from behind. His body instantly lightened. With a shout, he suddenly dashed out and was within 300 feet in an instant. He took out a talisman diagram and was about to open it. At this moment, Zhang Yan suddenly raised his head and looked at him. Elder Yu's body shook violently and he was unable to move. His face was filled with shock. Elder Huixian's eyes shone brightly. He let out a whistle and also used the Heaven and Earth Forbidden Lock technique. At the same time, he shouted, "Fellow Daoist Ji, quickly help him." How could Ji Daoren not know his intention? He pointed downwards and Elder Yu's hands and feet suddenly loosened. He knew that the opportunity was gone in the blink of an eye. He secretly gritted his teeth and raised the diagram to face Zhang Yan. Using force with both hands, he suddenly pulled it open. Chapter 724. Just as the scroll was completely unfolded, Elder Hui Xian and Ji Doran's hearts suddenly felt empty, and then their expressions changed greatly. Zhang Yan's figure suddenly disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Elder Yu's eyes blurred, and a sword light leaped over, instantly tearing apart the protective treasure light on his body, and pressed forward. At this moment, he was trapped by the 5 elements escape skill and was unable to move. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright, and could only desperately use his thoughts to activate his talisman, hoping to protect himself. But that sword light was really too fast, and because he had poured most of his spiritual chi and mana into the seal, when he pulled his hand back at this moment, he couldn't help but be a beat slower. He could only watch as the cold light streaked across the sky, and his body was cut into 2 at the waist. A smear of golden light appeared on the Imperial Decree diagram, and the person who cast it was killed. After flashing for a few breaths, it closed up again, and returned the scroll to its original state. With a shake, it fell to the ground along with the 2 halves of the corpse. A figure flashed 1,000 feet away, and Zhang Yan's figure appeared again. He stood with his hands behind his back in the clouds, and dozens of sword lights also flew over, and gathered around him, like stardust flying around, spinning back and forth. With his rich experience in fighting enemies, just now seeing that Elder Yu was about to force his way over, and that Elder Hui Xian and Ji Daoran were both creating opportunities for him, he immediately guessed that once he got close, he would definitely use a powerful move, and would most likely be able to pose a threat to him. So the person surnamed Sua beat him at his own game, first purposely letting him in, and then taking the opportunity when he was activating the Imperial Decree, he suddenly released his flying sword, and successfully killed him with 1 strike. At practically the exact same moment, he used the 5-element escape technique to struggle free of the shackles and flee into the sky, causing the decree to miss. The timing at this moment could be said to be perfectly grasped, and if there was even the slightest deviation, then he would have fallen into the trap. If it wasn't for the fact that he had been through hundreds of battles, and that the supernatural powers and Dao techniques that he had learned were all superior techniques, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it. Hui Xian ancestor's face suddenly turned ugly. The battle had only started for a short while and the person he had high hopes for was killed. It could be said to be a bad start. At this moment, a chill rose in his heart. Just now, Yu Bingyi did not actually make a mistake. He was just acting a little too impatient. However, this slight flaw was seen through by his opponent, and he was struck by his sword. From this, it could be seen that his opponent was extremely good at seizing opportunities to win. If he was even the slightest bit careless, he would probably die. As far as he was concerned, Zhang Yan, a Yuanying 2nd-tier cultivator, was actually able to escape from the imprisonment lock that he and Ji Daoran had joined hands to set up. This was truly unexpected. The reason 3rd-level nascent soul cultivators were able to suppress lower-level cultivators, besides their profound cultivation, was mostly because of this Dao technique. If this technique returned without success, then it would be extremely difficult to predict the outcome of a battle between both parties. Especially this opponent, who seemed to have the same ability to imprison heaven and earth, this made people even more fearful. Not only Hui Xian ancestor, even Ji Daoran felt that it was troublesome. However, an arrow on the string had to be shot. It was absolutely impossible for the 2 of them to give up at this moment. They exchanged a look and flanked each other from the left and right. Chu Changji had just seen Elder Yu's ending just now and did not dare to get too close. Moreover, under the envelopment of the heaven and earth prohibition lock technique, it was extremely difficult for him to even fly, not to mention to intervene in the battle. He could only wander outside, looking for an opportunity to strike. Zhang Yan's gaze swept over. From the changes in their expressions, he could tell that it was the right decision to kill Elder Yu first. Although the 2 who flew over were Yuanying 3rd-tier cultivators, and he had the confidence to defeat them, but it was not easy to kill the 2 of them. During the battle with Long Zhu, even though Rong Juanzhong was not his match head-on, but after that, he used the method of guerrilla warfare and was still able to deal with him. Although he had the 5 elements escape technique, but the opponent's skills were higher than his, it was not easy to stop him. Therefore, to kill the enemy in front of him in one move, he still needed a clever plan. He thought for a while and came up with an idea. He raised his hand and the heaven and earth leaf flew out of the cloud and spun in the air. A golden curtain of light hung down and enveloped his body inside. Then with another thought, dozens of sword glows soared into the air and rained down towards Hui Xian ancestor like a violent storm. At this moment, the attacks were all directed to the right and completely disregarded Ji Daoren, who was attacking from the left. Ji Daoren saw Zhang Yan's actions and with his own experience, he immediately deduced the intention of this action. From what he thought, Zhang Yan was fighting 1 against 2 and he was afraid that he himself was not confident, so he relied on his own talisman's strong defense to give up one side and first kill Hui Xian with all his might. After destroying the other side, he would then turn around to deal with himself. He thought again and thought, this is also good. Hui Xian, this old fox, is just now purposely using words to make me the vanguard. I will slowly cast my spell and let him suffer a little first. He clapped his hands, and a grayish-white mist rose from his palm. Wisps of smoke rose into the air and formed a huge leaden cloud in the air. It was about 1 li in size, and it was heavy and stagnant. He made another hand sign and pointed his finger. Dozens of lightning flashed across the cloud. Although there was no sound, there were rays of light condensing and brewing in the cloud. Hui Xian ancestor suddenly saw Zhang Yan charging towards him with all his might and his heart immediately turned cold. He knew that his escape technique was not as good as the opponent and it would be useless to hide somewhere else now, and instead he would easily reveal his flaws. Therefore he did not avoid, and with a calm expression, he reached into his sleeves and took out a full wheat ear. He shook it in front of him and saw a grain of wheat shriveled up. A jade-like gold color immediately appeared on the protective treasure light and it looked thick and solid. The sword glows swept over and brushed past the treasure light, sparks sputtering from time to time. At this moment he also made the same judgment as Ji Daoren. He thought that Zhang Yan's intention was to first concentrate his strength to kill one person and then turn to deal with the other person. He glanced towards the sky and saw that Ji Daoren seemed to be up. He pondered for a moment and decided not to avoid. He wanted to attract him here and fight for a chance for Ji Daoren to attack. Therefore he even made a hand sign and shook the wheat ear in his hand continuously. He activated his mana and managed the protective treasure light to become like an iron wall. Looking from the ground, it looked like a dazzling starlight wheel. No matter how the sword glows slashed at it, it still did not move. He dared to do so because he had the treasure in his hand and he believed that Zhang Yan would not be able to break through his defense for a while. Although he guessed that Ji Daoren would play some tricks, as long as the other party still wanted to snatch the 9 Huang star bead, their goals were still the same. As long as he could get rid of Zhang Yan in the end, he would accept it even if he had to suffer some losses. Zhang Yan used the light-splitting swordsmanship to attack Hui Xian Patriarch back and forth. The sword glows were swift and fierce, like waves stacking one after the other. The sound of the sword glows and treasure light clashing resounded through the clouds and there were even lightning flashes in the sky. It could be said that the momentum was overwhelming. Daoist Ji was also shocked by the sight, so he no longer sat and watched. He pointed his finger downwards, and a grey light shot down from the leaden clouds like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, it crashed into the golden curtain below. White light overflowed in all directions and exploded. It was like lightning and raging flames, continuously producing sounds and splendor. However, it was unable to shake the heaven and earth leaf in the slightest even after more than 100 times. This technique did not work, but he did not look anxious at all. In his heart, he also had the thought of watching the two of them fight to the death and he would reap the benefits in the end. So although his attacks looked fierce, he actually secretly held back and did not use his full strength. Zhang Yan saw his actions and could not help but smile. He had seen what the two of them had done previously and knew that the two of them were not as harmonious as they looked on the surface, but each had their own ulterior motives. So he cleverly made use of their mentality and ignored Ji Daoren and went to deal with Hui Xian first. Hui Xian Patriarch originally thought that it would be fine if he blocked the sword glows by himself. But after holding on for a moment, Zhang Yan's sword glows had increased from the previous 30-odd to 64. The sword glows were like snowflakes and hail, falling down in succession, and the pressure was more than doubled. And until now, Ji Daoren was still unable to break through Zhang Yan's protective magic treasure. Instead, it was getting more and more strenuous on his side. He scolded in his heart, but it was not the time to turn hostile, and he still needed to rely on this person. So he reluctantly transmitted his voice, "Fellow Ji, why are you still not killing him?" But Ji Daoren replied, "Fellow Hui Xian, don't be impatient. This person's mana is deep, and if you don't find a way to exhaust him, I might not be able to kill him even if I use my methods later. Fellow Ji should have seen that this person is not afraid of our trapping technique. If he doesn't die from his injuries and uses his escape technique to escape, how can he chase after him later? Fellow Ji, please hold on for a while longer. When he is exhausted, I will naturally use my killing technique." Hui Xian Patriarch immediately kept quiet. Although Ji Daoren's words were selfish, but the logic was not bad. He could only secretly call out to his disciple, "Disciple, come and help me. This Daoist Zhang is currently being restrained by me and can't take care of you. Just relax and come over, don't be afraid." Chu Changji also believed that he had seen the situation clearly. At this moment, the three of them had reached this stage, and it was nothing more than whoever could break through the opponent's defense first would have the upper hand. Therefore, when he heard his master's order, he did not hesitate at all and leaped forward. Not long later, he came near and took a look below. He threw out a handful of silver beans towards Zhang Yan. When Ji Daoren saw Chu Changji coming forward, he guessed that Hui Xian Patriarch might really not be able to hold on any longer. As he was afraid that he would not exert any more strength and cause his plan to fail, he hurriedly took out a lion head gold bracelet, and after chanting a few incantations, he threw it downwards. This treasure landed, and with a dang sound, it hit right on the heaven and earth leaf. Like a hammer striking a large bell, the sound shook the mountains and rivers, the clouds and sky rang, causing the layer of light screen to tremble. Then the silver bean arrived, but it was far from this item. Like a stone falling into water, it only caused ripples. Ji Daoren waved his hand and summoned the jade bracelet. After a moment, he struck down again. This time, the heaven and earth leaf shook continuously, looking like it could not hold on any longer. When Hui Xian Patriarch saw this, he thought that he was going to exert his strength seriously. He hurriedly pulled himself together and activated his mana again. He gritted his teeth and held on against the rain-like sword lights. The two of them had the intention of exhausting Zhang Yan's mana, but Zhang Yan also had the same intention. Just that the time was not right yet, that was why he did not use any other methods and only used his flying sword to slash. At this moment he saw Chu Changji coming over and his face turned cold. He suddenly waved his sleeves and hundreds of serene heavy water flew out and struck towards him. Under the forbidden lock technique, Chu Changji could only face it head-on like his teacher. Unexpectedly the heavy water splashed over and the protective treasure light was smashed into pieces in a blink of an eye. The blood drained from his face and he hurriedly retreated backwards. At the same time, he hurriedly took out a dust tail that was like a fan and swept it back and forth. Just when he thought that it was enough to deal with it, suddenly an inconspicuous drop of ink pierced in. The dust tail in his hand was like moving a mountain, but it did not budge. With this delay, a bang sound was heard. His chest seemed to have suffered a heavy blow from a battering ram. With a muffled groan, his body was actually hit until it spun one round in the air, and in a shower of blood, he fell down. Chapter 725. P.S. There will be more at night. Chu Changji was heavily injured and it looked like he was not going to survive. Hui Xian Elder sighed and transmitted his voice, "Disciple, don't worry. Master will take revenge for you. It's just that it's useless for you to keep this essence, why don't you give it to Master?" He opened his palm and waved it at Chu Changji. There seemed to be a ray of obscure gray light that absorbed all the essence in his body. Then with a turn of his technique, a jade pill was formed in his palm and he threw it into his mouth. Immediately his face was red and he was 100 times more spirited. His appearance was originally lifeless, his eyebrows and hair were sparse like withered trees and withered grass. But looking at it now, he seemed to be younger. The technique he was using just now was a supernatural power called defying coming and following defense. It was originally a technique from one of the 3 evil sects, Mang Luo Gong. It could borrow the essence of the disciples of the same sect for one's own use and thus extend one's lifespan. When this sect was destroyed that day, he hid this Taoist book in his hands. It was just that he was originally from an unorthodox sect and did not practice this sect's technique. In addition, this technique could only extend one's lifespan by 10+ years and had many hidden drawbacks. If it wasn't for Chu Changji's imminent death, he would not use it now. Zhang Yan saw that Hui Xian elder was distracted and would not let go of this opportunity. With a shout, the attacks in his hands suddenly increased by several degrees. Dozens of sword rainbows exploded and greeted the protective treasure light. For a moment, the sky was filled with the sound of the air being sliced. Hui Xian ancestor saw that things were not good and hurriedly focused his mind. His mana surged out and the treasure light on his body rippled like water, spreading out in circles. Under the sweeping of the storm-like sword light, it was difficult to resist. In a short moment, dozens of grains of wheat in his hand had shriveled. Zhang Yan seized the opportunity and did not let it go. With a wave of his hand, there was a bright red blazing fire coming from the sky. Hui Xian elder's eyes unconsciously twitched. When the 2 sects' dragon pillars fought, he had seen Zhang Yan use this method to break the protective treasure light of 7 Xianyu disciples in one move and then behead them with a flying sword. He had long been wary of it. He was not a disciple of the celestial sect. It was unavoidable for his cultivation technique to have flaws. If the protective treasure light on his body was destroyed, it would be difficult for him to summon it again in a short period of time. However, he knew his own weakness, so before he came here, he had already made preparations in advance. He shook his body. He retracted the protective treasure light and circulated his mana. A spiritual vigor rushed to his head and a speck of pearl light appeared on the hairpin. In a split second, it covered his entire body and the brilliance circulated. It grew more than 10 feet long. The firelight swept over in a flash. With just a slight touch, it was like snow melting under the blazing sun. Half of the pearl's light disappeared, but there was still quite a bit left. Dozens of sword lights followed him and slashed at him continuously. Although it barely reached his body, it stopped a few inches away from his body. After the fire light passed, Hui Xian old ancestor hurriedly made another hand sign and raised the protective treasure light again. It was actually an impenetrable defense. It was just that he had held back 30% of his strength so that he could escape at the wrong time. But after doing this, he had used almost all of his strength. He had no time to hold back. Just now when Zhang Yan attacked with his sword, he could predict that he would definitely have a follow-up move and could escape at any time. Thus, he wasn't in a rush to use his methods. While he was wasting his mana, he was waiting for a chance. Once he grasped it, he naturally wouldn't allow him to make a comeback. He immediately hollered and stepped down. The collapsing river surged and huge waves surged into the sky. The vast water light covered the sun as it came. Hui Xian old ancestor didn't even have time to catch his breath. At this moment, the water light landed and he had no strength to dodge. Although he knew that it was bad, he could only bite the bullet and not move. In an instant, he was trapped in a vast ocean. Numerous waves surged and washed, wanting to drag him in. He had no choice but to use most of his energy to stabilize his body. However, the sword light above him didn't reduce at all. When the 2 attacks collided, he was also fearful. If the flaming light from just now were to attack again, he would not be confident to resist it. Thus, he begged and transmitted his voice. Fellow Taoist Ji, please help me quickly. If I die, you won't be able to obtain that star pearl by yourself. Daoist Ji was outside of the encirclement. If he went forward to rescue Hui Xian, he might be able to help him escape. However, he took a glance and saw that although Zhang Yan had the upper hand, it would be difficult for him to take Hui Xian down in a short amount of time. Thus, he ignored him. He did so because of his own considerations. Against Zhang Yan, he was a little restrained previously. His attacks couldn't be too fierce or too weak. If his attacks were too heavy, he was afraid that his opponent would use the sword and escape. But if his attacks were too light, he was afraid that Hui Xian would leave without a care. Now that Hui Xian was trapped, he could only fight to the death on the spot. But that was more in line with his intentions. Why would he try to help him escape? As he used the jade bracelet to greet the heaven and earth leaf, he took out his hand and secretly summoned the 1,000 luo heart silk from afar. This item was originally used by him to defend against the flying sword. But it was too slow to use. Now that the two of them were in a stalemate, he could use this gap to perfect his own setup. By then, with the inescapable net as a basis, Zhang Yan would be like a fish in the net. He wouldn't have to worry about him escaping. It was fine even without Hui Xian. After that, he would kill Lian Nyangzi and think of a way to hide the spiritual opportunity. Then no one would know that he was the one who did it. Zhang Yan looked sideways and noticed Ji Doran's action. He thought for a while and smiled. But he did not stretch out his hand to stop him. He could tell that before this person's setup was stable, he would not really attack with all his strength. So he might as well beat him at his own game. Hui Xian Elder saw that Ji Daoran only cared about manipulating the spider silk and did not pay attention to him. His heart sank. He knew that this evil cultivator only treated him as bait and would definitely not come to help. He could only give up this thought hatefully and shouted to the sky above, "Lian Murong, why are you still standing there in a daze? Quickly come and help." With his shout, Lian Nyangzi, who was on top, trembled. After a moment of silence, she turned into a traveling light and flew towards the west. Hui Xian Elder was stunned and scolded angrily, "Stupid lowly servant. Since you came today, you are on the same side as me. Even if you escape, where can you escape to?" Lian Nyangzi did not dare to go up and help. It was not that she thought that the two of them were not a match for Zhang Yan. With her eyesight, she could not tell. The reason why she escaped was because she saw Elder Yu and Chu Changji's ending. She thought that if she went up, she would only be sending herself to her death. She might as well take advantage of the battle between the three of them to leave. Hui Xian Elder felt the qi activity in the clouds gradually go far away and then disappeared. Despair rose in his heart. His path was cut off and there was no help outside. He was almost in a dead end. He gritted his teeth and took out a handful of golden sand. He threw it up and it instantly turned into thousands of stone eggs. When it fell down again, it was like a hailstorm. The force was so great that even the water element True Light could not hold it back. He did not hope to injure the enemy but only hoped to restrain Zhang Yan so that he could find a chance to escape. Zhang Yan sneered and raised his hand to point. He used the 5 elements escape skill and moved these stone eggs to other places. Hui Xian's eyes were blood red. He was still not satisfied and took out another 2 mysterious jade loquats. He crushed them and a wisp of black smoke rose into the air. Everywhere it passed, it was like ink entering water. The smoke was tainted with filth and a fishy and sweet smell filled the air. Zhang Yan waved his sleeves and in an instant, thunder rumbled. Hundreds of strong lightning fell like rain and exploded. In just a moment, the smoke was swept away. Hui Xian Elder shot out another arrow from his sleeve towards Zhang Yan's eyes. But before it could get close, it was blocked by the heaven and earth leaf. Hui Xian had cultivated for close to 1,000 years, although he had gathered many treasures from other sects, but there was almost none that were compatible with his own cultivation method, and all of them were unable to unleash the original power of its owner. Doing this would only exhaust his mana, and he would not be able to do anything to Zhang Yan. But he knew that this move was like drinking poison to quench thirst, but he still did not stop. He thought that as long as he could drag it on and wait for Ji Daoren to finish his arrangement, he might have a chance of survival. After a moment like this, he had used up all his methods, but he still did not see Ji Daoren move. He unconsciously felt his face was ashen. Zhang Yan saw that he did not make any more intense movements and knew that he had exhausted all his tricks. He also saw that the stalk of wheat withered and only a few grains were left. He knew that the opportunity had arrived. With a clear cry, countless purple lightning burst out from the strong cloud and gathered into a purple qi river, rumbling and crushing forward. When Ji Daoren saw it, his eyes were cold, but he did not extend his hand to help. He had already gradually summoned the threads of his heart. There was still a little more to completely cover this heaven and earth. If he went forward to help now, wouldn't all his previous efforts be in vain? Thus he decided to ignore it and thought to himself, even if this Taoist Zhang could kill Hui Xian, he would not have much mana left. I don't believe that he can still fight with me. Hui Xian, old ancestor, had no choice but to make his last struggle. He shook his hand and the remaining wheat grains exploded. He used all his strength to maintain the treasure light protecting his body. At the same time, he shouted, "Fellow Zhang, do you know that the treasure pearl that you obtained from the underground palace has a great background? That pearl was originally known as Nine Huang Star Pearl, it belongs to." He hoped to use words to delay, but who knew that Zhang Yan acted as if he did not hear it. He leaped forward and countless purple lightning followed him like a crazy wolf. In a blink of an eye, Hui Xian's figure was swallowed up completely. Ji Daoren was stunned. He did not expect Hui Xian to be defeated so quickly. At this moment, the arrangement was still a little unstable. There was still a gap in the sky that was covered by the spider silk, but he saw a sword light turning around, as if it wanted to escape through the gap. He was instantly anxious and threw the lion head jade bracelet in his hand. The sword light turned and avoided it. He did not chase after it. Instead, he took out a spell and with a poof, the spider web was completely sealed. The sky also darkened. He instantly calmed down and put his hands behind his back. He smiled sinisterly at the bottom, "Fellow Zhang, I will not hide from you. I am here for the Nine Huang Star Pearl. I have no enmity with you. As long as you hand over this pearl obediently, we will stop fighting and have nothing to do with each other from now on." Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, "How can this thing trap me?" Ji Daoren snorted coldly and pointed to the surroundings, "Fellow Zhang, don't talk big. This is refined by the 1,000-year-old white spider silk. Even if you have water and fire supernatural powers, you will not be able to break it in an instant. Moreover, with me here, how can I allow you to do it slowly? I advise you to give up on this thought." Zhang Yan smiled and did not say much to him. He shook his hand and cast a treasure in midair. This item was like a huge pillar with 4 leaves on its head and tail. It rotated like the wind and the clouds were dazzling, shining with 7 colors. It slowly flew into the sky. When Ji Daoren saw it, his expression changed. 100 refining heart-locking pillar? This treasure was refined by the founder of the small warehouse state. He also knew how powerful this item was. It was indeed not difficult to break the spider silk, but in this way, wouldn't his efforts be wasted? In his anxiety, he shouted and rushed over. He wanted to go forward to stop it, but he suddenly heard the sound of sword chi breaking through the air. His heart shuddered and he hurriedly cast a protective treasure light. However, the sword light was ruthless and did not give him a chance to breathe. After a while, he suddenly heard a rumbling sound. He looked up and saw that there was a big hole in the dome. Then, a sword light flew and went outside in the blink of an eye. Chapter 726. Ji Daoren didn't have time to think, he leaped into the air and wanted to chase after him. However, he only traveled 100 feet before he felt a sense of danger. A sharp feeling pressed against his neck, causing his hairs to stand on end. It happened so suddenly, he was in the midst of escaping and didn't have time to turn around and dodge. Moreover, with the deaths of the people before him, he didn't dare to entrust his life to the protective treasure light. With a thought, he had already used a divine art. A sword ray pierced through his chest, but it was like it hit a shadow and didn't hurt him at all. Taoist Ji had yet to recover from his shock. He shook his sleeve, and a talisman that had been broken into 2 pieces gently floated down. This divine art of his was called form and shadow entanglement. In times of danger, he could use his own blood to replace the talisman. However, this talisman wasn't easy to make, he only brought 2 out from the sect. After the talisman Yang's sect was destroyed, he couldn't gather enough spiritual medicine to make this item. He was shocked and retreated 100 feet. He raised his head and saw another sword ray flying in the sky and disappearing in a blink of an eye. He didn't dare to act rashly, he was sure that it was gone. At this moment, he suddenly thought, this Taoist Zhang must have exhausted his mana and knew that he couldn't escape, so he purposely ambushed me. Now that I think about it, he really escaped. Although he thought that way, he wasn't in a hurry to chase after him. Just now when he saw the sword ray coming out, he thought that Zhang Yan had escaped. Who knew that not only did he not leave, but he also hid at the side and used a flying sword to attack him. If it wasn't for the talisman, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled and he would definitely lose. After suffering such a loss, he didn't dare to be careless anymore. He carefully circled around the 1,000 gauze silk and when he saw that it was really gone, he cursed. He hurriedly chased after it. Just as he was about to reach the hole, he hesitated for a moment and became wary, slowing down his traveling light. He took out a jade pheasant the size of a thumb. He held up his palm and allowed the sunlight to shine on it. A misty brilliance appeared, like the horizon at dawn, containing the sun and covering his entire body in a layer of green and red clouds. This item was called the Dawn Stone. Within it was the soul essence of a pheasant that had cultivated to a certain level. Because the cultivation techniques of the Fu Yang sect were mostly of the Yin attribute, this item was originally used to ward off evil. It could also be used to defend oneself. Its effect was even comparable to a high-grade profound artifact. Even he himself did not realize it. Just now, Zhang Yan's sword might not have taken his life, but it had worn down quite a bit of his sharpness. He became doubly cautious. Now that he had the treasure on him, he dared to go up without worry. However, as soon as he came out of the hole, he suddenly felt an evil wind pressing down on him. When he raised his head to look, his expression changed. There were countless rays of yellow light gathered together in the sky, and they were as large as lofty mountains. At this moment, they were pressing down fiercely with great momentum. It was almost unblockable. If he went up just like that, he would definitely crash into them. He hurriedly stopped his escape technique and wanted to evade from the right. However, he didn't get far before he was met with hundreds of ink-colored water droplets. All of them hit the protective treasured light on his body and were instantly shattered into scattered spiritual energy. It was only when they came into contact with a layer of protective multicolored light that they were blocked. Even so, his body was still jolted back. At this moment, the mountain suddenly sank and smashed onto his head with a bang. Even though it was blocked by the Dawn Stone, he still felt dizzy, his chest swelled up, and his ears rumbled like drums. His body couldn't help but once again fall into the 1,000-net silk net. Only after falling for hundreds of feet did he recover. However, his face was green. He didn't think that not only would Zhang Yan not leave, but he would also guard the hole. Looking at the situation, if he didn't take the initiative to dispel the 1,000-net spider silk, he could forget about leaving. However, he really spent a lot of effort to set up this thing. In order to prevent Zhang Yan from escaping, he even added a few curses on it. At this moment, how could it be easy to dispel it in such a hurry? Not only would it consume a lot of magic power, it would take at least half an hour. Even if he could get out in the end, the advantage he had previously would be lost. Just as he was thinking of a solution, he heard Zhang Yan's clear voice coming from outside. "Fellow Taoist, if I didn't guess wrong, the treasure of the Southwest Dragon Pillar was stolen by you and Hui Xian. Elder Zhong Tailin also died in the hands of the two of you." Ji Daoren frowned and then sneered, "So what if I did?" Zhang Yan's voice came again, "I have already sent a letter to sect leader Qiao. It won't take long for him to rush over with a group of people. The people who will go with him might even have the heads of the 3 sects in the South Continent. I wonder if you can handle it by then. Ji Daoren was shocked when he heard that. At this moment, the heads of the various sects in the Dongxing continent were gathered under the dragon pillar. These people didn't know that the 9 yellow star bead in his hands had been lost. If they knew that he was here, they would definitely rush over to kill him regardless of everything. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but panic. However, he was still stubborn and said, I don't believe that you don't covet the 9 yellow star bead. Aren't you afraid of one more person sharing it? Zhang Yan smiled, it's up to you whether you believe it or not. If you have patience, just wait. Ji Daoren understood that just now, he was a step too late. During that period of time, Zhang Yan did have enough opportunities to send a letter. He was afraid that Zhang Yan's words were not false. Thinking of this, he felt extremely regretful. If he had known that this would happen, he wouldn't have delayed and hesitated just now. Then, he wouldn't have fallen into the predicament of being trapped here. However, at the end of the day, this was an overt plot. If he wanted to live, he had to fight with his life in this disadvantageous situation. His expression was gloomy. To remove the 1,000 luo spider silk, not only was it time-consuming, it was also laborious. On the other hand, Zhang Yan could calmly recover his mana outside. Even if he went out, how could he fight with him when he was exhausted? Therefore, this plan was definitely not feasible. He took out the Dawn Stone and looked at it again. He shook his head. There was already a deep crack on this magic treasure, and it had lost a lot of spiritual opportunity. He didn't know how many more times it could resist. Perhaps only by using the death substitution talisman could he break out. However, there was only one talisman left, and he was extremely reluctant to let it go. After thinking for a long time, he sighed and said, I guess I won't be able to get the 9 yellow star pearl today. The longer I stay here, the more danger I'll be in. I can only think of a way to escape first, and see if there's a chance in the future. He raised his head and looked at the sky. He made a gesture and released the protective treasure light. After he was ready, he shook his robe and turned into a conveyance light to fly up. Not long after, he rushed out of the hole. Just as he got out, he saw a huge hand pressing down on him from above. He snorted and turned into a flash of light, wanting to break out from the gap between the fingers. At this moment, a sword gleam flashed in front of him and landed on the protective treasure light. There was a sudden tremor. At this moment, he only cared about escaping and did not have the heart to maintain it. The treasure light dispersed in a few breaths. Fortunately, he still had the Dawn Stone with him. The treasure suddenly emitted a ray of light, and the sword gleams that attacked were all deflected. At this moment, Ji Daoren had already left the mysterious yellow hand behind him. When he looked back, he could not help but feel that he had escaped. Just as he was about to use the method of reverse truth to return to his body, he was about to make a gesture, but his body stopped, and his eyes were filled with fear. Zhang Yan put his hands behind his back and stood above. His sleeves fluttered in the wind. Behind him, the sky was filled with purple clouds. Thunder and lightning raged inside, and thunder rumbled. It faintly formed a huge net, almost covering the heaven and earth. Ji Daoren only felt that the sound of thunder seemed to be able to restrain his cultivation method. It shook his eardrums to the point they were about to split, and his head ached extremely badly. Even his mana was difficult to circulate. He was also able to determine that the force of this thunder was many times stronger than when he killed Hui Xian just now. The best choice at this moment was to retreat into the 1,000-net spider silk. But he had managed to get out with great difficulty, so how could he be willing to go back? Moreover, just now was in a hurry to escape. His charge was too fierce, and he had come out for a few miles. He was afraid that before he could retreat, the thunder would strike him first. Thinking up to here, he steeled his heart and decided to forcefully resist it. He immediately bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood on the Dawn Stone. A rainbow circle appeared on his body, and a majestic pheasant with bright feathers flew out from within. It spread its wings and screeched as it blocked in front of his body. Zhang Yan smiled and calmly raised his hand before lightly waving it downwards. Instantly, thousands of lightning snakes struck down from the sky. The sound of thunder resounded in the sky. The pheasant gave a long cry and took the initiative to flap its wings up. In the beginning, it was still able to contend with the thunder. But once the violet heaven thunder was released, its might grew stronger and stronger. After resisting it for 7 times, it was finally unable to hold on any longer. With a wail, its spirit was shaken and dispersed, dissipating between heaven and earth. Without this pheasant obstructing it, all the lightning turned their spearheads towards Ji Daoren. How could Ji Daoren not know that at this moment, he was in a life and death situation? If he didn't kill the person who cast the spell, the heaven thunder would not stop. Thus, he took advantage of the gap when the violet heaven thunder destroyed the pheasant and rushed up without caring about anything else. In a flash, he was above the clouds. He opened his mouth and spat out a white arrow that went straight towards Zhang Yan. This supernatural power was called Jiang 6 Turns Arrow. It could chase after the opponent's chi to attack. If it encountered an intangible object, it would become tangible. If it encountered a tangible object, it would become intangible. At most, it could change back and forth 6 times. It specialized in attacking the soul of a cultivator. If it was light, the victim would lose their mind. This was the most vicious supernatural power in the Fuyang sect. The person who cast the spell had to sacrifice 260 years of life in order to cast it. When the 5 major sects besieged the mountain gate of the Fuyang sect, there were many cultivators who died under this spell. Because the price was too high, if it wasn't for the fact that he was forced into a corner, Ji Daoren wouldn't have used this spell. After casting this spell, he felt weak all over his body. However, he didn't forget to put the life substitute talisman under his tongue. At this moment, thousands of lightning bolts came together and gathered on his body. With a loud bang, it was as if the earth was broken and the sky was shaken. After a while, he appeared and spat out a mouthful of black residue. Although he had the life substitute talisman with him and avoided this attack, under the lightning, his Dharmakaya was not as solid as before. From the waist down, he could no longer see his legs. Instead, he drifted like smoke, as if a gust of wind would blow and it would disperse. He forced himself to make a gesture and thought to himself, when I go back, I'm afraid I'll have to cultivate for another 100 years to recover my vitality. Fortunately, if I get rid of this person, as long as I get the 9 yellow star pearl, it won't be too much of a loss. He was very confident in the Jiang 6 Turns Arrow. Since the establishment of the Fuyang sect, no one had ever escaped from this spell. He took a breath and opened his eyes. However, his body trembled and froze on the spot. His eyes revealed a look of disbelief. The lightning in the sky did not disperse as expected. Instead, it gathered in the sky again. The wind and thunder moved like the thunder, rumbling and echoing. It was actually brewing an attack there.